Right, in Grant County, it's all different.
The volume of the room just went up right by the ceiling.
You're fine. The reason everybody's here, at the end of the day, we're trying to get rid of the finish line.
Yep. I have the honor of welcoming you and getting us started. And there may be a few folks that kind of come in during this first part. So that's an okay thing. Also, if you didn't find them, there are refreshments right around the corner, water, coffee, and snacks. And so help yourself to those throughout the event this evening. And if you need restroom facilities, they're right out this door on the left if you've not been in this facility before. We're really glad that you're here tonight. I'm Sue Kane and Holly Bringman. We have the honor of leading the Apple STEM network as co-leads for North Central Education Service District, and Holly is there as the STEM network director. And then I have a supporting role for NCW Tech Alliance. And so I get to open us up and tell you just a little bit about the STEM network and why we're doing a legislative forum. Some of you have come and we've had legislative forums every other year as we've introduced new candidates and worked alongside legislators. And so I want to start by just welcoming you. And our legislative district, or our service district rather, touches 3 legislative districts. And there have been some updates to the legislative districts this year. So if you're joining us, and I should say, welcome to those of you who are in the room. We also have an audience online joining us tonight. But you it would not be odd if you were not quite sure which legislative district you are in. So we want to welcome tonight candidates for offices in District 7. District 7 is massive. District 7 includes parts of Chelan County, parts of Douglas County, Okanagan County, Stevens, Ferry, Pend Oreille. Am I missing anything? Spokane County. Yeah, so it is a really big district. And District 12 is here tonight. The candidates that are representing District 12 have Chelan County and Snohomish, and maybe part of King County. Yes, yeah. So there's a stretch there. And then we also have District 13. District 13 wraps around us, and there are part of their district is in Kittitas and Grant County, all the way up into Douglas County over by Payne-Bourne Airport. So our region for North Central Washington touches District 7, 12, and 13. And there is not a great way to equitably host a legislative forum and get information out for our constituency in a way that everybody had access to all. So thank you for our tech support for tonight, who is going to live stream this. For those of you who are joining online, as far as you are, we actually have some ways for you to be interactive, and I'll tell you about that here in a second. But those that are in the room, we appreciate you taking the time and making a trip. For some of you, it was quite a trip to come and join us tonight. So with that, I want to introduce you to the Apple STEM Network and why we are particularly interested in forming a partnership with our legislature. The Apple STEM Network was actually formed in 2015 here in North Central Washington. And we have a vision that every young person in North Central Washington, regardless of demographic features, like race or gender or geography, is on a path to a promising career, something that they've chosen for themselves, and something that has the future demand that will earn them a family wage. They should be able to do that if they choose to have a family for themselves. This is our vision. And you might ask, that sounds really great. What's the problem? The challenge that we have is that there is a system in place that has some misalignment, and there are systemic barriers that our young people face. So I know there's a lot of text on your slide right now, but essentially what it's saying is our problem statement. When we've done an analysis of those family sustaining or family wage jobs in North Central Washington, we find that 65% of them require some kind of a credential past a high school credential. And we value apprenticeships and certificates and labor and trades. We value a degree, a university degree, a graduate degree. We need all of these things. But 65% of the jobs that are at that family sustaining wage require something past high school. And unfortunately, right now, only 33% of the young people in our region are on track to earn that post-high school credential. That is combining the trades and the apprenticeship and the degrees. So there's a misalignment between the local opportunity for youth and the job market. That's where we're doing our work as the AppleStem Network. The graphic here, if you're curious about where we get 33% are on track, there's a really great dashboard that we collaborate with Washington STEM, and we put together a dashboard that this is the image from their analysis, but it shows you as an example, the 2021 graduating cohort is just under 4,000 individuals for North Central Washington. And of those individuals, some of them don't make it all the way to high school completion. And you can see that first off ramp, they get out of that pathway before they get to a high school diploma. A considerable number of them we lose between the high school completion, high school graduation, and any kind of post-secondary enrollment. And that's that second off ramp. Then once they make it to some of these programs, we also see a lot of students that are leaving or exiting too soon. They're not getting that post-high school credential completed. And so there's some of those places where, as an AppleStem Network, we're working to make sure that young people have support and that they know where they're going and that their pathways align to careers and that it's very visible, it's well-lit pathways to be able to get to that credential. What we know is that you might say the class of 2021, there was a few things going on for the class of 2021. Maybe they didn't go right to high school or maybe they didn't go right to a post-high school program after graduation from high school. And you might be right about that. It's actually a little bit better than the numbers show in that graphic. And about 45% of the class of 2021 has enrolled in some kind of a post-high school outcome or post-high school program. But unfortunately, they're still not persisting in those programs. And the year-over-year enrollment is such that we still are stuck at about 33% of them will have the credential that they need by age 26 to be able to join that labor market credential. So it's still not rebounding in a way that we could say, oh, this had to do with the pandemic and enrollment is lower than it should be because of the pandemic. There are other barriers in that space. The local implications of us not having enough talent to be able to fill those roles is amplified throughout the state. Across Washington state, we have a really tech and STEM workforce dependent need. And we see that 70% of the statewide jobs require some kind of a credential or workforce certificate after high school. And that pressure from outside our region, it filters in a way that the employers that are joining us in the North Central Washington region are having to find skilled labor and training and workforce programs outside of the region as well. So they recently did an analysis where they compared and said how many of the college programs, workforce training programs, apprenticeship programs in North Central Washington align with the local labor market needs, including some of the incoming labor market needs in energy and some of the data centers. And they find that only 29% of the credentials that are offered in the region align with some of those pain points. So we bring this up because the statewide implications are such that our young people, if they want to be a part of a family sustaining career path, they need to have access to workforce and training programs. So we need to be able to work on the development of those programs. We also need to be able to work with employers to make sure that there's alignment between the workforce and the training programs here locally and the needs and gaps. We need to be working collectively together to be able to make sure that this is dynamic and that it can be updated as we have newcomers coming into the region. We want to make sure that the employers that are here feel like they can't believe how lucky they got to tap into the most competitive pool of workforce that we possibly could have had. So the Apple STEM Network was launched in 2015 as a collective impact network. And to illustrate collective impact, because that it is a bit jargony, collective impact means that it's beyond just collaboration where we're all aiming at the same outcome. We are all aiming at the same outcome. But in collective impact, we honor the fact that our K-12 partners are going to work at this solution a little bit differently than our college partners and our employers. And we all want to get an advancement of the system. We all want to come into alignment. So it's not everybody for themselves. It's not even collaboration. Collective impact means we go faster because we do our own authentic work in a way that's aligned and coordinated with others across the system. The Apple STEM Network is led by a cross-sector board, and we've got the logos of our organizations that are represented. I know I have a lot of the Apple STEM Network leadership board in the room, and I'm going to put them on the spot and just ask you to give a little wave if you are currently serving on that board, and if some of them are online as well. But we have K-12 schools and higher ed, industry, and community-based organizations represented, meeting 8 times a year to learn together and share data and learn together, bring additional resources into the region. We have 5 core objectives, and I will not read them all out loud to you, but fortunately, I do know them by heart at this point. So our areas where you see us lean in is in raising awareness about STEM education and the importance of STEM education, and about the types of actors and programs and opportunities for young people is all about raising awareness across the region. Career-connected learning is a program pillar that looks at the development of programs that are accessible for all youth because they're throughout K-12 education. They start with exploration in elementary school, and as we move into middle school, high school, you actually have students learning skills that they will use in the workplace. Career-connected learning extends to our college students, and we want to see our high school and our college students with paid workforce opportunities to actually be a part of that. In our fortified transitions, we look at how students need support when they go from a handoff, either from the early learning into formal education, way at the very beginning, or the middle school to high school transition, and that high school to post-high school training opportunity. And so those look like financial aid. They look like creating partnerships with parents and community at the early learning space. In our support for educators, we want to see professional learning opportunities for our school leaders, our school teachers, for informal educators who have opportunities to inform young people. And the last is our economic development space, something that the Tech Alliance feels really passionate about. We actually have to prepare young people for a frontier of careers that are descending on us at this moment. So this is the part that keeps us not complacent, that keeps us looking at where is North Central Washington growing and where do we have an opportunity to meet that leading edge with the programs that we're providing for students. So economic development is a unique part of the Apple STEM Network work together. What we do together is actually a little bit different than bringing a STEM program to an after-school building. What we do together is systems change work. So a lot of times the Apple STEM Network work is not visible in the ways that you might say, where are the programs? We get a lot of calls. Where are the STEM programs? I want my student in a robotics club. And that's a very obvious thing for families to see as STEM. But a lot of the work that we're doing involves policy work, which is why a legislative forum is really important. We visit our legislators every year, and we are following pieces of legislation around everything from early learning to dual credit to workforce and career-connected learning. We have great relationships with the legislators as they do community work over in Olympia on behalf of our region. And so that policy piece is really important. We also do work through a variety of efforts around the practices for people that are in the region, their resources, that's funding. We look at building relationships between entities that don't interface otherwise, but should. And we look at power dynamics. This is an area where sometimes a K-12 educator and a college educator, for example, might feel tension or power dynamics based on enrollment or perceived stature. And we do a lot of work to make sure that we set a neutral place where those individuals can look at what's best for student outcomes. And the last is mental models. We do a lot to reshape the way people are thinking about STEM education, about workforce, about preparation, and about the potential for our young people. So this work is around how we change the system, create better alignment for people to, or for our young people to be able to succeed in those careers. With that, I'm going to switch gears here and tell you a little bit about what to expect for our legislative forum tonight. And if you're just joining us, please feel free to take seats or grab snacks. But what we'll do here is in just a moment, I'm going to hand over the stage to my counterpart, colleague Bringman, who is going to have an opportunity to share insights from Senator Short. Senator Short is not a candidate for office. She is a legislator this session, but we do have candidates coming for District 7 at 5 o'clock, and District 13 will start at 5:45. And then District 12 will be at 6:10. And then we'll conclude the evening with some time to network for those of us that are here in the room. I'll let the candidates and the moderators introduce themselves with each one of those introductions. I will share that we've got some rules for our candidates as they come up in panels. We have a couple of legislative candidates who are going to be joining us by Zoom. They had some conflicts that they couldn't avoid, so they'll be joining us by Zoom and in person tonight. But tonight's questions all focus on that pre-K to 12th grade STEM education, higher ed, and the career and workforce relating to that Apple STEM network priority body of work. All of our candidates received the questions in advance, but we sent them a list of 12 questions that they won't all fit in the time that they have up there. So they do not know necessarily which question they are responding to, but they have been given those questions in advance. They will be asked if their running mate is here or online. They'll be asked as a pair of candidates to respond to one question, and each candidate will be given 2 minutes to give their response to that same question. If you would like to follow up with us here in the room or online, we have a Padlet set up for you, and I'll show you here in just a second how you can add your questions, your comments. We know that in the 40 minutes that we have for them to be in front of you, that we won't be able to cover all that you want to talk to them about. So I want to encourage you to visit there, and we wanted to create an artifact where they could revisit it to follow up with you if you had a question. So if you add your questions there, we will encourage them to go back to be able to address any questions that are posted there. And then a moderator will be monitoring that Padlet tonight as well. If we end up with some extra time, we might be able to advance that question, but we'll see. If you have not used Padlet before, it is fairly straightforward, and you are very tech savvy and intuitive people. So I'm confident that you'll be able to do this. But there's a QR code there on the screen. And to add to the Padlet, you'll simply select the little pink plus sign. And you actually have a variety of things that you can add. You can add a document, you can add a link, you can type directly in as a post. It's a very versatile platform for being able to add things. You'll notice that each panel has its own column for you to be able to follow along. And in addition, you won't be able to see it, but off to the side, there are some additional resources, some links, and some prior legislation relating to some of tonight's topics. So you have those on hand. And then my last task of the night is a message from Senator Warnick. Senator Warnick could not join us in person tonight, but she wanted to make sure that you knew that she is aware of the Apple STEM network and the work that we do, and it is valuable to her. She sent the following message, and I will read this out loud because it is very small text, but thank you for the invitation to the Apple STEM Legislative Forum. I'm very sorry that it will not fit into my schedule at this time. As a business owner, I am very aware of the need to educate our upcoming workforce to meet the needs of future employees. More importantly, I am also an aunt, a mother and grandmother who has helped younger relatives who are interested in their future employment opportunities by researching connections to future jobs. The services that North Central ESD, local school districts, Big Bend Community College, and Wenatchee Valley College provide are critical to ensure the future workforce in STEM education and career-connected learning. I appreciate the sponsorship of the Legislative Forum and look forward to hearing the outcome of the discussions. So with that, we want to share our appreciation and thanks to Senator Warnick, and I will invite Holly and Senator Short.
Folks want to have a seat or grab food during a transition time, she's like, that's great. Yes.
Maybe I'll sit in groups here. Yes. Right here. I could sit there. Yes.
Hey, how are you? Good to see you too.
That's a quick turn on that lever.
What I do here, it's sitting in front of good things.
Super admirals. You made it through year one.
All right, I think we're gonna move ahead, but feel free if you're grabbing snacks or refreshments, just do that in your own time. I want to push us ahead so we don't get too far behind in our agenda. I want to thank all of you for being here, especially our panelists and our board members for Apple STEM Network. And I want to thank Senator Short for traveling all this way in the gigantic district that she serves to be with us tonight. She represents the largest district in Washington State, just got a little bit larger. And she's lived in the region for over 30 years, right? Yeah. Yeah, and born in Spokane Valley, if I'm not mistaken, and Spokane Falls Community College. Yes, yes, absolutely.
Thanks for watching.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching.
Eagles, right? Yeah. And she's been called a champion for the rural lifestyle, and she's actually advocates for water and agriculture needs, as well as affordable energy and sensible management of natural resources. So you joined the House in 2008 and then moved to the Senate in 2017, correct? But your work in public policy started in the 90s.
A long time ago.
Yeah. So that brings us into my first question for you. Looking back at your journey to the legislature, what inspired you to pursue public service? Or were there any pivotal moments or experiences that shaped your path to becoming a state senator?
Thanks, everybody, for joining. I see a lot of familiar faces in the room. I started this by accident, and I say it because the pivotal moment for me, unbeknownst to me at the time, I ran George Nethercutt's congressional office in northeastern Washington. And at the time, I just thought he really enjoyed working with him, didn't see it as any career path, just thought it was a good moment in time. But what it ignited in me is a passion I didn't know I had. And I worked for him the entire time, the 10 years that he was in. And he was a great mentor, but I saw an advocacy on a level that he instilled in us as individuals to work hard for people who were being, were forgotten or weren't listened to, or working those partnerships to get things accomplished. And honestly, I never knew. And it's just, I always say I blame him for where I am today. And that's a good thing. That's not a bad thing. It's just been tremendous. And I work hard to be as effective as I can. And I see many colleagues in the room that we all work together and we work across the aisle because, that's how you accomplish things. And I just love what you're doing tonight and the information that we get as well. So thank you.
Yeah. All right. So I think we're going to shift a little bit into STEM education. Sure. That's what we do. So in our region, there's a growing need to prepare students for the future workforce, especially in fields related to STEM. What opportunities do you see for students in our area, and how can STEM education help equip them with the skills necessary to thrive in the evolving and emerging job market?
Well, it is evolving. There is no question. I know representing such a rural, diverse district, oftentimes our students, even there are programs in, say, Spokane, it's really difficult to travel to them. Ferry County, for instance, is 3 hours from Spokane, and that's in good weather. And so it's really what I'm going to highlight tonight is actually one of my seatmates' bills, Rep. Maycomer's bills, and that's on regional apprenticeship programs. She worked many years on that, but the issue was really how do we bring these programs to students all across the state of Washington, regardless of geography. And so it really looks at the apprenticeship models that are already well established and how can we support schools and the regions to establish them there. As with anything, when you get it started, it's not available right away. And that's the hard part right now. But there are folks that are looking at locations and how those programs should be established. And I really think that it was tremendous of her to go that direction because it really shows both what you're seeing is the lack of and the need and making it geographically based, which as what you had said, there's so, 29% of these programs match the workforce. So in a region like this, you can really use it to match that workforce. And so I'm excited about the opportunity. It's being put together as we speak. So it's hard not to say that it's up and going right now, but I think it's a huge opportunity. But the other thing I'd like to just echo when it comes to any of these connections with employers is job fairs. I've worked personally with one up in Colville for basically Northeast Washington. And I was so surprised at the employer. They were eager to want to be a part of it. And the students were coming from Newport, they were coming from Cusick, they were coming from Republic and down to really say what's out there. What are the potential, employers and jobs? And then they actually got some hands-on with for natural resources, some of the logging equipment and things like that virtually. But it was just a way for them to get connected and for potential employers to get connected to them. Not everybody who grows up in a rural area wants to leave. They want to stay. And so many of them have to go away and then come back. We hear that a lot. And so I think it's incumbent upon us as lawmakers, but really our communities and employers, what can we do to keep our workforce here? And so I'm excited.
Yes.
It's all good. High school, college and the high school is great. A lot of kids get connected that way, but we need to do more. And obviously the information you presented shows that we've got a lot of work to do.
Yes. But you're so right, that exposure,
Yep.
Seeing that light come on for a student is one of the best parts of what we get to do.
Well, and it's so hard. It was a really long time ago when we were all making those decisions, but you want the students opportunities to try things and to say, hey, these are things we might want to do, and to give them kind of that helping hand, if you will, to see what they might choose. And it's super cool to see the students when you can see they're connecting with something, and that's just really rewarding.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so that's kind of on that further end of the spectrum.
Sure.
If we want to walk it back to the beginning of
Sure.
that journey, right? In rural regions like District 7, there are significant challenges in accessing early learning and childcare options for families and employers, compounded by workforce shortages. How do we address these barriers? And what do you think needs to be done first to expand access to high quality early learning and childcare for children and families in our region?
Sure. Huge issue. A lot of areas in the 7th district are childcare deserts, which COVID only exacerbated that. And I'm looking at Rep. Young because he does a lot of early learning and just appreciate your work. Because I think what we need is more tools, not less, more options for parents, not less. And, Head Start's a great option. But again, those are things that we need to fund in the legislature. But then you also have schools that are already developed, that are starting to develop preschool programs, which in our area, we've seen tremendous success by these kiddos that need that extra help. And so what we need to do is make sure the legislature doesn't get in the way of being able to be, I think, creative and really meet the families and the students where they're at for the families. So I hope we don't get in the way, because sometimes we want everything to look and be the same. And that gets in the way of the individuality. But the other thing I have to say, and this has happened over time, Daycare operators do their businesses, they're huge and they do such hard work and valued work. But what we've done is we've made it all look the same. And what we've done is we've chased away smaller models, in-home daycare models, and things like that, saying that they don't work anymore. And I think that's sad. I think we lose tools and we lose choice for our parents, and what's the best situation for their children? One isn't necessarily better than the other. So I think as we've changed to encourage education, obviously make sure kids are safe. I think we've done a little bit of disservice in reaching so high over here that it's really hard for families to retain childcare costs. And so as a result, we have huge deserts and we have businesses that they work so hard and their passion is education for kids. And so I kind of wish we had an all of the above. Yeah. And I hope we get there.
Yeah. Well, so as you're speaking about things that are very near and dear to the work that we do and what we advocate for, it just brings me to the last question that I have for you, and then we can open it up and see if there's questions in the room. But as we continue to advocate for education and workforce development in our region, what advice would you offer on how to effectively engage with legislators and create the best conditions for meaningful collaboration?
Sure.
So how can we optimize our efforts in policy advocacy to ensure our voices are heard and our priorities are addressed?
Well, I would just say that the work here at our central ESD, they do a tremendous job. I mean, they communicate with their legislators. They get us information. We're looking at a myriad of different subjects all the time. And truthfully, ones that we don't have a lot of information on. And so it's important to establish those connections with the legislators who are in your district. Whether you personally as an individual or a parent and a voter, just get to know them. We want that information. It helps us make better decisions. And just, encourage bipartisanship. I'm kind of where there's a will, there's a way, especially if you don't get, you don't care who gets the credit. I see many legislators in this room that really, they live by that. And I think it makes for better outcomes. But just don't be afraid to ask. And talk to us about what you're seeing. Like just a little bit, I was here before we started, that I was writing notes because there are important pieces of information that help me make better decisions. So just really get to know, us and look for those opportunities, whether it's in district, virtual is an option if you can't meet in person or you can't come to Olympia. But I know just about every legislator, they want information. So absolutely. And get to know our LAs too. They're really important and they know how to get information to us when we need it. And they oftentimes know where we are, if we're not where we're supposed to be. So they're great partners as well.
For those of you who don't know, LA's legislative aid.
assistance.
Yeah, absolutely. Right hand people.
We're an acronym.
Right?
We're an acronym.
Education doesn't we started lots of acronyms. So absolutely. All right. Thank you so much. It looks like we've got a few minutes to take maybe some questions from the audience or if there's any questions in the Padlet.
So you mentioned college and the high school, and I was really glad to hear you say that. I also just wanted to bring up, the kind of the gold standard is Running Start, because Running Start, a student is immediately on a trajectory to a post-secondary credential. College and the high school, they are not.
Right.
So they're just getting credits. And one of the things that I think many of us who are educators would like to see is to transform college and the high school so that those students are on a pathway to a degree. Because so many of them, they're just getting a mishmash of college credits. They're probably not, going to UW because many of them are geographically bound to our area.
Right.
And they've got this assortment of college credits that just don't lead them anywhere. So they're having to retake classes or take class, I could go on and on, but I just wanted to put that on your radar as well. It's a topic that I feel very, very passionately about. in my area, there are a lot of great family sustaining wage jobs coming in. Students aren't, as Sue showed in the data, they're not on track for that post-secondary credential. And it's a game changer for both the manufacturers who are coming in, as well as for people who are living in intergenerational poverty, to leave high school really close to getting that post-secondary degree or even having it. But it takes a lot of effort. Famous night to go into a lot of detail about the effort it takes to use college in the high school as that jumping off place.
Sure.
Whereas students who are doing Running Start, they get the gold standard just because of where they live, the proximity to the community and technical college. And it's, and I think that we have the infrastructure already within, between higher ed and our high schools to really make a dent in that, make a difference in the lives of students and their families.
Yes, good to know. I really love them both. My kids personally did both.
Yeah.
Running Start and they did college and school. So it worked out well for them. Right. We need to continue to grow that and make it workable. So.
I'll just make a statement to kind of reemphasize what we just heard. I'm a school district superintendent in Ephrata, and we currently experience anywhere between about 17 and 23% reduction in FTE between the sophomore year and the junior year. And it's because we do have some kids who access Running Start, some of our technical schools, et cetera. A more robust opportunity within the walls of Ephrata High School that would keep our students here, I believe would lead to a reduction in the lost FTE that we have. And so we struggle financially just at that level in terms of our funding because of that reduction in FTE. And again, I do think if we can build a partnership, and we do lose a number of students to Running Start, my own daughter being one of them, which is a great opportunity for students. But if we can find a better way to build some of those opportunities within the walls of our schools, I think it would be beneficial to all.
Do you think with the bills that I mentioned, the regional the apprenticeship model could potentially be one of those where it keeps students a little bit closer to home base?
Yeah, I would love to see that. I do think that is something that could potentially, support our students in their learning and their growth.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So anyway, just
I know.
reiterating, I guess.
And I thank you for what you're doing. I've talked with our local superintendents, and they just want to help their students find that success. So they can do what they want to do as they grow into adulthood and have lives of their own. So I just appreciate your passion, and I know our superintendents share that as well. Thank you.
While we're on the track. I agree with that part of college and the high school. Sometimes kids are comfortable with humans that they've built relationships with in 9th and 10th grade. And to be able to keep them there to get those short certifications to where then they could go to their junior college and finish up. Because we're also losing FTE. I'm from Wenatchee School District, and we're losing 200 plus kids worth of FTE to go do Running Start, and that's a big hit on public ed. Whereas we could be building a partnership where we're articulating with our local college for credits that then they could launch into finishing at the college.
It needs to work better, the financial piece, definitely.
For both.
Yeah.
Because right now, 40 to 50% of my enrollment at the college is Running Start. And so high schools are being penalized in their budget for their successful students who are going to the community and technical colleges. And so unless there's like Sue had talking about collaborative, but there needs to be alignment where we're all working together. Right now, we're all set up to compete with each other,
Exactly.
which is just not
Which is the way the model is set up right now.
right. And that's
Not
not
conducive for
good.
either group.
Either.
No, it's not. No, those are good conversations to have. Thank you.
May I jump on the bandwagon?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
So my name's Tracey. I'm from Cascade School District up in the Leavenworth area, and so very much K-12. But I agree with this sense of partnership rather than competition. For example, Wenatchee Valley College is our #1 receiving institution, and they become our competitor when they have Running Start students. So they're both our collaborator and our competitor, and I don't love that because they are our #1 receiving institution. So it should be all collaborative. And I think it's important for legislators to understand that school districts have responsibilities for Running Start students. So for example, they need to complete their high school and beyond planning. So it requires efforts from our school counselors, even when their enrollment is at community college. So not only is all of the funding going to the community college, but it actually is a drain on our resources because we have to provide additional supports that we do not receive any funding for. I would also like to highlight skills centers that are similar. So we are in these consortiums. So Cascade School District ends up competing for Wenatchee School District for our students to have opportunities that they may not be able to have in Cascade School District. And I don't think that's a great model either. It's also strange because like I'm on their board. So it's this weird collaborative, competitive relationship. And you can see we're all super passionate about it because we all want our students to succeed. At the end of the day, we're all trying to improve the statistics that Holly was talking about earlier. We all care about it, but I think we all need to be in the same room together with y'all so that you can hear the different perspectives and kind of set us up for success because we want to collaborate, but we're set up in this weird situation of partial collaboration, partial competition.
Well, it's kind of been that way on the credit end too. You know, there've been a lot of discussions about, you know, are the credits that they receive, you know, going to transfer, you know, on the higher ed. It's both, but I appreciate the points.
Yeah, we got one more. Go for it, James.
Okay, I'm gonna switch it if we can.
You can
Sorry,
switch
I'm going
it.
away from
You're okay.
post-ed and I'm gonna go to early education because that's where I come from. Thinking about our youngest, most vulnerable and valuable citizens, right, our early learners, we have a large uptick in the need for mental health supports and behavioral health supports in the early learning world. So I'm thinking, my question is kind of twofold. How might we best elevate that need for access, not only access and belonging, but supports and resources and services in our most rural and remote areas? And how might we also think about this topic we're talking about with growing or college in the high school and whatnot, expanding that further beyond STEM, if you will, to a more holistic approach of behavioral health models.
Are you talking about behavioral health for the, you know, young kids, or are you talking about their families?
And both, because a young child doesn't exist outside of that at all.
Right.
So, yeah, elevating that family child need. And I know we have advocated for more home visiting programs in our remote and rural areas. So that is one place I know we could probably lean into more. I know Grant County has advocated a lot for that, but yeah, any
Be like home visits tied to like child protective services?
home visiting like parents as teachers
Oh, okay.
programs or infant early childhood mental health programs. I think, I mean, I can think of a lot of those positions right now that are vacant because of not having qualified persons to fill those roles in the remote areas where we are.
Well, and just as a workforce, I mean, we've seen such a shortage of individuals who are certified to the level they need to be able to take on those positions. And that's the hard thing is we've got such need, and, you know, COVID again, just exacerbated it. You know, a lot of our students, you know, schools, they're rural. And they, COVID rocked their world and in not a good way. And I think we still see students that are struggling through that. And those are school age kids. Those aren't, kids that say are preschool age. And I know there was work done last year to hopefully get people encouraged. I can't remember if they passed, but it was like, can we help pay for tuition, and things like that, where we can really encourage people into those fields. And the other thing is a lot of times we'll have compacts with other states where individuals from other states that have skill can come into our state. Those are a little bit harder to come by. They're usually individually done, but you just outlined the huge need. It's so big. And the hard thing is like we don't have the workforce. We in the state, to be able to provide service to those that need it. And it's really difficult. We're seeing it in schools, we're seeing it in daycare centers and in families, where you can see that children need guidance and they need the help. Thank you for bringing that up. It's a lot harder in our rural areas too. A lot more remote than this.
Well, thank you everybody for all the really thoughtful questions.
Thank you so much.
And thank you, Senator Short, for being. We're going to take 5 minutes to transition to our District 7 panel. So you need to grab a drink or some food, use the restroom. Super good.
For sure. Yeah.
You gotta get things clean up here. Yeah.
But these conversations didn't happen. The partners needing all people No, I know.
I don't remember recording, but we are live streaming.
Yeah. I know. And do I still want to drop it? Yes, but no. Do you need anything? We're 30 minutes with Seattle. Honestly, like,
Hopefully everybody's had an opportunity to grab a refreshment and some snacks.
I feel sorry for the next one.
All right, once again, I want to express gratitude for all of you who are here in the room with us tonight and on Zoom. We're so happy to have you with us. Our next panel, or our first panel, is the District 7 panel. And we are going to, I'm going to introduce the moderator for that panel. Someone who I worked with briefly, too briefly, but still continue to collaborate with. I consider him a personal friend, and I'm so excited that he's agreed to be here tonight to help us with this. He is the president at Wenatchee Valley College, and his name is Dr. Famous Harrison. So if you want to come on up. And then I'll invite all the District 7 panelists to come up and have a seat in any of these chairs. And I'm turning it over to you.
Wonderful. Let everybody situated.
Pick a chair, don't fall off.
You guys ready?
Better not.
Excellent. Well, we're gonna first start by doing introductions. Today, we will start with Andrew.
Hello, my name is Andrew Engall. I live in the Colville area. Got 4 children, ages 6 up to 15. And I worked there for Congresswoman Kathy McMorris-Rogers the last 7.5 years. And I'm looking forward to your questions tonight and hopefully representing you in the legislature and working with your organization to advance children's education.
Thank you. The next for Chelsea, position 1, Sue Ing-Moody.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having us. My name is Ing-Moody, and some of you know me as former mayor of the town of Twist for the last 13 years. We served 14 years in local government in Okanagan County. I also work for a state agency, so I also know some of you through that work. And so I am seeking the position 1 for a state representative for this district, a portion of your districts, depending on where you live, and hope to use my experience and knowledge working both at the statewide level as well as local government to serve you in legislature. My family is from Okanagan County. I have 2 boys who are now studying engineering. So I'm excited about that, sharing that with you. My husband is a paramedic working at Cascade in Leavenworth. So we have some roots here as well in the in this region. So thank you.
Thank you so much. And for representing House Seat 2 position, Hunter Abell.
Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Hunter Abell. I'm running for the 7th Legislative District, position number 2. Thank you, Dr. Harrison, for being willing to moderate this. I want to thank Holly and the other individuals involved in coordinating this event tonight. This is a great event. I thought I'd tell you a little bit about myself, a little bit about my personal history, my educational background, and then some of the issues that I think when it comes to STEM. So I was born in Colville over on the far side or closer to the far side of the 7th District, and then went K through 12 at Enchilada there on the Colville Indian Reservation in rural Perry County. So my graduating class was about 15 students. So a tiny little group of students that went all the way K through 12. Went off to undergraduate, happily married in Virginia, where I studied government. Because I wasn't good at any of the STEM subjects. And then I went on to law school at Gonzaga, came back to Eastern Washington, Gonzaga. And then I joined the Navy and did 20 years in the Navy between enlisted and officer. Joined with the Navy. I'm still a reserve and still from Spokane. So it's a little bit about my educational background. I've got 2 beautiful daughters, 9 and 11. They attend a little private Catholic school down in Kennewick. And so it's interesting to me to see what interest they're developing as they get a little bit older. And so that's a little bit about me. My interests are very much interested in exploring this relationship, this need for STEM students, STEM graduates, and kind of reconciling it also with the importance of making sure we just focus on the arts and humanities.
Thank you so much. Our first question is going to be for Andrew and Sue. Workforce demand. The Apple STEM Network data shows that 68% of the family sustaining jobs in North Central Washington require some sort of credential after high school. But just 28% of our local youth are on track to earn a credential after high school. What do you believe are the most important actions that we need to take this next year to ensure that more of our students are prepared to fill these roles for local employers? Let's go ahead and start with Edou.
Yeah, thank you for the question. It's a really important aspect of education is to prepare our youth for the workforce so that when they graduate, they can get good jobs and take part in the community where they live in. And we'd like to keep some of them in our local communities. It's the trajectory from rural America is that kids graduate, they go away, and sometimes they never come back. And so I think part of it is rural kids don't necessarily see the pathway, or they think it's too hard, or they don't understand some of the fields. And so I Senator Shelly Short was talking about, I think the career fairs are really good, access to some of the pre-apprenticeship programs, opportunities for these youth to get exposure to opportunities, and something that stimulates their interest is a way that helps drive them into some of these fields and motivates them to learn some of these things that they might not have learned otherwise.
Thank you so much. So,
Yeah, I will say, pathways is key. And I think one of the things that was, you all know this better than any of us up here, is the fact that, the kids, if they don't see the clear pathways, it's a challenge depending on, what your interests are, you need to find your way. And so I think that's one of the things, and I hear that you are working on that, which is wonderful. The other thing I hear you're working on, which I think is also great, but I obviously hear the concerns that was expressed here today too, is on the aspect of collaboration. I know for a fact with my other hat on that you do that well here. And I think that's one of the things about STEM that is just so phenomenal compared to, other areas that have STEM, but they don't have that collaborative effort. And it really takes a lot of what you're putting together to make that happen for the students here. But with that, there are certain challenges like you're mentioning, and that is the competition, and that there is not that alignment that you're actually seeking. But what I see is that, the solutions that you're producing here on the ground are the models that we will look for as well in the legislature to move forward. It's a model that's very intrinsic of the area, the region that you are in, which is also not one size fits all. And I think that's the key too, especially when you talk about workforce development and what that means for the kids if we want to retain them, for the areas and the jobs and the, whatever opportunities that may be here in this area. So I think that those are all key things. And I think, you're on the right track. I think that, the legislature could help you a little bit more in this endeavor. So thank you for the question.
thank you. Question number 2 is expanding career-connected learning opportunities. That's the focus. North Central Washington has benefited greatly from the Career-Connected Washington Regional Network and Program Building grant in recent years. Given the regional focus on increasing career-connected learning opportunities, how will you work to support the expansion of pathways that align with local labor market needs and ensure students are connected to high-demand, family-sustaining jobs? And we'll transition to Hunter.
Yeah, great question. So I will admit I'm not particularly familiar with this particular grant program, but assuming there is a legislative role in funding this, then I'm going to be looking at a few things. One, how effective is it? 2, who are the stakeholders involved in ensuring that this grant is working? And 3, who are ultimately the decision makers in how these funds are allocated. I really do believe in a dynamic role at the local level for our schools. And part of what I want to do in the legislature is trying to empower our schools to meet the demand that they see, that they're identifying on the ground for their students. So again, my experience is a little bit unique going K through 12 there initially. At least when I was there 25 years ago, the relentless messaging was really a 4-year degree. And if they're not doing that, then there's kind of, at least at that time, my perception was that there was at least a bit of a message that didn't convert succeed. And so I'm interested in having different messages that are out there, one that models technical programs, one that models community colleges, and one that really shows these students that there are various other pathways out there in addition to the traditional four-year program that can be very, very successful for them and allow them to have the kind of lives they want to have, and allow them to be successful in carrying out their own. So those are some things that I think about when we're talking about this grant.
Thank you so much. To build on that, alignment with career pathways, and this will be for Sue and Andrew. Washington State has recently adopted a policy to implement a system for supporting students with a universal platform for the high school and beyond plan. What do you envision needing to happen to ensure that the high school and beyond program connects students with viable career pathways, apprenticeships, programs, and technical training opportunities that align with the current and future workforce needs of Washington? Let's have you start first, Sue, this time.
Wow, universal platforms, there's an issue, obviously, in some of our areas. We don't all have the same resources, the same infrastructure. There's issues when it comes to universal, how do we implement that in some of our most remote areas? So I think that, it's really leveling that aspect of it to better understand, are we using the same technologies? And if we are, does everybody have the same access to those technologies and ability to utilize those tools? I think it's important to give tools, but I also think those tools need to be accessible and equitable for us to be able to enable, that success that we're hoping for. So that's one thing. I think the other thing is when it comes to the Career Connect, there are, like was said earlier, different pathways, and there's a private component to this as well with when we talk about workforce development and what are those jobs currently in existence that we're trying to connect to. And I think that needs to be continued to be built up too. And I know that here locally, that is happening as well in some of the programs, Microsoft and other organizations that have come in and enabled that kind of cross-pollination and partnership in the classroom to enable students to have pathways already and having teachers be training alongside with the students to enable them to both learn at the same time so that can be continued as well. So I think, in some ways I look at this as being kind of, you're building that plane as you're flying it. And I think that's part of the challenge right now in education, because we know that education is and has changed and the needs of technology and everything else has been changing already. So we are now, as you are educators, finding out you are providing that education while you're also having to retool yourselves to provide that education. So I think supports for that in this universal platform and everything else are all about the tools, technology, and leveling that equitable playing field for you as educators, as well as for the students and the workforce that we're ultimately trying to connect the students to.
Andrew?
I think it really is an exciting time in the education world in a lot of ways that we are getting these options that are more diverse than we've had in the past. And I appreciate some of the OSBI's work on improving career connected learning opportunities. And we really do have to work on some of these apprenticeships, pre-apprenticeship programs. Some of the rural areas are having a hard time implementing them. We need to give them more options and less mandates. That's really a thing I believe. And when we do have mandates, we need to make sure the state's fully funding them. Because our kids, they want to learn, they want to do things. They need to be able to see and understand where they're going and what it takes to get there. And so I think there's a lot of excitement as far as the opportunities are getting better in education. And I want to work to continue that. I get into the legislature.
Thank you. Now we're going to have a sort of real technology, artificial intelligence question. AI skills. Yes. This one will be for you. Artificial intelligence is reshaping work in every sector of Washington State. How should Washington State be investing in preparing me for the future of work with AI tools? What steps need to happen to ensure all youth have access to develop these essential employability skills?
Yeah, it's a great question. You know, in the legal profession where I come from, AI is a big thing that we are grappling with. I know all professions and sectors are really wrestling with AI. What does it mean? You know, especially for our next generation as they come forward. There's a bit of fear. You know, all those jobs going to disappear. And I will say, I think there's fear on kind of both ends of the professional spectrum. You've got the people who are coming into the profession, they're afraid, you know, and invest a lot of time and energy into, say, law school. Is the job going to be there? Is the compensation going to be there that makes it worthwhile? And then you've got folks a little bit quite a bit more senior in their career that are afraid that can be, and that's what I see. You know, and so I think a big part of the AI conversation needs to be talking about how can it, one, reassure individuals, you know, how can it be a tool for increased productivity? You know, I think it is going to be a significant tool for increased productivity across a variety of sectors. I think we can achieve that productivity without the human costs that I think some fear. There will definitely be changes and evolution in how we engage in the work that we do because of AI. But this is true with every profession, with each new technology that comes along, is that we change. But I don't believe that it needs to be a sky is falling type of situation. So what can we do with the schools? I think a lot of those answers are going to come. I think I will be asking a lot of those questions if I'm honored enough to elect the legislature. I'll be asking the educators, the leaders of the school districts about what their thoughts are. I know, again, I've got a 9-year-old and 11-year-old, and having to talk to them about technology, AI, all these different things. So I would be really creating feedback and ideas from the school districts about how to end up addressing this and tackling this. But I think, bottom line, I think this could be a significant contribution to sure way.
Thank you. Just wanted to do a time check, okay? This next question is really related to post-secondary resources. And I will transition to Sue and Andrew for this one. As a rural region with no access to a university, community and technical colleges played a vital role in our regional workforce development strategy. We are committed to ensuring that local industries have access to the skilled workforce they require. Our colleges face challenges related to shifting enrollment, instructor shortages, and general resource constraints. How should the state be responding to the needs of our community and technical colleges? And we will start with Andrew on this one.
Great question. And I don't say that I have a silver bullet on this one. I think it's one of these things that we need to have conversations about. Your organization might probably know a lot more about this than I do. I've not worked on post-secondary education that much. It's something I look forward to learning more about, and I'll consider options and learning more about how we can work together to solve these issues. And I do believe that particularly the community college system is a great asset, particularly in rural communities where a lot of kids at Steele need, or at least the first place they're going to go.
Thank you. Sue.
Well, I think it has to do with what you're on to already, and that is systems change. The conversation is about systems change and how do we maintain the viability at all levels of education, including post-secondary, recognizing that, what was mentioned earlier about the transfer credit issues between colleges, or even if you are doing Running Start, does that transfer into what you're wanting to ultimately study, post-secondary education? Not necessarily. We also know, based on your statistics, is that the sooner the students have that access, knowing that clearer pathway, the moving into that post-secondary education is going to be much easier and more seamless, and enabling them to be basically successful at the end of the day with the careers that they're hoping to do. It's a win also for the workforce shortage situation that we're experiencing in the state. So again, I think that it is a systems change. It is really holistic because it's all hands on deck, and it does require that we can make these changes so that the students can also gain the knowledge and education needed while not punishing in some ways. That's not the right word really, but I'll just say it feels that way. I'm sure if you're a post-secondary education and you're losing on some of the funds because of the examples that were given earlier, when you're competing with each other basically for that. And I would also add that another challenge in rural areas is the population or the enrollment issue, because we know that that has been a marker historically for funding, but ultimately, just like at the local government level as mayor for the last 13 years, when we talk about population and density, and that's how you get your tax base, that is a limiting factor. And what we ultimately want is success for the students, success for our employers, success for you as educators and the educational systems. And so we really need to look at what that means and how do we have that robust conversation about systems change and what our ultimate goal is, and that is ultimately success for all, right? And that's the key for education, and that's why it's so complex, which is also why I love it so much, because I love complex things. But I will say it's a challenge, and if I am so lucky to be elected by you and others, you know, certainly it is something I look forward to learning more about and talking to you all about in each of your roles on how we can bring even others to the table that need to be to really talk about that, what's needed here, because education does not look the same as it used to way back when we were growing up.
Thank you. Well, we're gonna build on part of education here when you recognize we are in a managed rural area. So the next question, we're going to kind of direct it to Hunter, but it's supporting rural and high poverty schools. The Washington Student Achievement Council 2021 legislative report highlights that students in rural areas and high poverty schools often have fewer dual credit opportunities. How would you prioritize investment in expanding dual credit offerings in these underserved schools to ensure equitable access for all students?
Yeah, it's a tremendous question, and it really speaks to me given where I live, where I was raised, in Shelly being a very clear example of a high poverty area with traditional ongoing challenges for individuals seeking education beyond high school and beyond. One thing I would say that I think is really true in looking at our district is that schools are vitally important in every community, but when you've got a really tiny community and a community that struggles with poverty, the school is absolutely essential to the community's identity. I mean, there are a lot of schools in the 7th district and a lot of communities in the 7th district where it's a handful of houses, a filling station, a couple of churches in the school. And the health and strength of the community is really defined by the health and strength of the school. So that's one thing I want to throw out there is that it's important in every community. It's really vitally important for the health and strength of some of these small towns in the 7th district. Directly to your question, how would we promote dual degree programs, dual certification programs in these rural areas? That's something I would be very interested in exploring what we're doing currently, what we've done in the past, what are the resources that are available. And part of our job, for those of us who are elected here, or the individual who's running, that's not here right now, Mr. Dean, is that we need to be an advocate for our rural small towns and our rural small communities. And foremost, thinking about this needs to be our communities that traditionally struggle with high levels of poverty. So making it a priority and looking at those questions, what we've done in the past, what are the resources available, resources to move forward in the future to make it better, more successful.
Wonderful. Thank you. Since we're a little ahead on time, I'm gonna hunt a little bit. And I'm gonna ask Tweedy to go ahead and respond to this same question. If you need me to repeat it, I can do that as well.
Can you, actually, if you could.
Okay.
That was got clear.
Yeah.
Clearly not.
Wait for the top. Okay.
I get it. I do get it. So
Saving energy.
This is what we breathe and catch up.
this impacts all of us, right? All educators, all taxpayers, all industries, all businesses, all people that love our region. So this is an important question. So supporting rural and high poverty schools. The Washington Student Achievement Council 2021 legislative reports highlighted that students in rural areas and high poverty schools often have fewer dual credit opportunities. How would you prioritize investment in expanding dual credit offerings in these underserved schools to ensure equitable access for all students?
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna say, I'll take it back to what I said in my last question, the answer there. And that has to do with, like small towns, I mentioned the tax base. We still have to do the same things. As educators, you have to do the same thing. As towns, we have to do the same things regardless of the number of, students or the number of population that we have in our towns. We have to provide the same services and the level and quality of services. And that is kind of how I look at it, and which is why I think, we really need to invest in what is it that we want regardless of how many people are in there. And that is kind of how it is. Enrollment's going to go up and down, just like our town's populations can go up and down depending on, where people decide to do post-COVID, things like that. I think that, it's not a scenario, if with levies, for example, if we are depending on levies for these resources, you're going to have a low tax base, that levy is not going to be able to cover it. So partially, I will say, it's funding, and it's a consistent funding that meets the needs regardless of where you are. And so those dual credit programs also require innovation. And sometimes in those rural areas of high poverty, we do not have the resources. We don't always have the services, even in those communities, that you would partner with in some of the larger areas in order to create those other pathways. There's a whole myriad of other things. I will say one of the examples I have specifically on dual credit has to do with, in the town of Twist. We do have at TwistWorks, it's a campus, I think you're familiar with, I see some nods. We're fortunate enough to have an auto body shop that's really, outside of the actual school. And it is where the students would go and be able to get apprentice and learn and get credit for it. And I think those are the kinds of partnerships that I would like to see, explored as best we can. But I also would like to listen to you on what the challenges are in areas that it doesn't meet that, that isn't a solution. What could that look like? And I think, technology can be a friend, as we know. And I think in those areas, we might be able to do something much like the TEALS program. Here you have a professional be zooming in and helping, mentoring some of the instructors for a year, and then they would be on their own and they could be on, teaching alongside. So even though they're not in the community themselves, technology could be used like the TEALS to potentially be a model elsewhere. So you are already on that. I think that moving that needle further and replicating in other areas of high poverty could be a solution. But then we also have to solve the broadband. But again, I like complexity, so it's okay. We need to work on multiple things at the same time.
Wonderful. I'm sure would you like me to repeat the questions?
No.
I'm good. Andrew.
Can I get a second crack at it?
I'm gonna start the same way Hunter did, to say that these schools in rural areas are really important. And for some of these rural students, school might be the only place they get a good meal today. And it is challenging, like Sue said, when we have low privately owned landmass that's taxable. A high percentage of the 7th legislative district is owned by the public. And so I think it's reasonable that we expect the public, as in the state legislature, to better fund some of these programs to allow youth from these areas with low tax base to have the same opportunities as the youth in the Puget Sound region. And so I fully support more opportunities and look forward to working with all of you to develop these strategies.
Do we have time for a question?
I think you did.
Wonderful.
Sure, yeah, we've got a couple that have come in from online. One of them, it's kind of a two-part question, but many of our STEM-related programs for K-8 happen via field trips and after-school programs and summer programs. And due to having spent over $700,000 of local levy funds on materials, supplies, and operating costs, these have been cut back and eliminated this year. Do you believe that the state should fully fund MSOC, which is the materials, supplies, and operating costs? Thank you. As one avenue for enhancing STEM programming?
Sue, would you like to start?
Yes. Yes, and yes. I do think so. You know, I mean, if we're going to make it a priority, and I know that it is, I think it is required. I mean, there's no other way around it. I know that instructors are suffering right now because of some of those shortages and are kind of working around that is, you know, to find a solution locally. And so I think that's a shame. So I think we do need to revisit that and see how we can better fund it. That was a pretty short answer.
Andrew?
I need to learn a little bit more about this, but as you all know, the paramount duty of Washington State's legislature is to fully fund basic education. And so these things that tie into basic education need to be funded. And certainly the field trips and these other opportunities, the question addressed, are really important. That is one of those ways that the youth get an opportunity to see the options and the opportunities that they can get post high school. And so I do think that's really important, and I look forward to learning more. And, you know, I don't have a fully fleshed out policy position on this, but I lean towards saying, yes, we need to fully fund it.
It's a good question. I'd like to thank whoever posed it. You know, again, I've got young kids. They love field trips. I love hearing about their field trips. So I know it's a way that they learn, and it really stimulates their thought processes as they learn about various subjects outside the traditional classroom environment. So that's my immediate thought. I'm pro field trip. One thing I would also say, though, kind of related to that question, the funding piece. I am curious, as I said before, you know, who are the stakeholders? What are the options? You know, what would it cost? And who are the decision makers here? And so if the decision was made to reallocate funds from that particular fund into a different fund, I'd be curious about what the decision making process was behind that, because I want to know. I believe there are people of good faith that are grappling with these questions. And so I guess to me, it'd be a question of priorities. And if there was a priority that was deemed more emergent, I'd want to know questions, or I'd be interested in the answers to questions like that. But if the funds were available, I would want to promote opportunities for kids, again, regardless of region, to engage in field trips outside the traditional classroom environment.
Wonderful.
For another one, do you have time for another? Okay. This one is interesting because it says, would you support requiring STEM-related local public agencies, for example, our public utility districts, or permitted businesses like data centers or manufacturers to provide K-12 learning opportunities and or apprenticeships? And so it would be a requirement.
I would not. It's an interesting idea. It's certainly thought-provoking, but I would oppose trying to impose additional requirements on these entities and businesses. What I would want to do would be to strongly encourage them to consider doing it as part of a partnership with the schools and as part of the communities they serve.
I agree. I think so too. I think I have more questions probably on what is behind that. Would be one of my questions is, you know, is there a shortage? Is there a need right now as far as, you know, the energy sector is concerned? What are we looking at wanting their participation in? I feel like there's more that has been presented in that question for me that I'd be curious to.
I think there's a lot of opportunity perhaps in this area. And I know, having talked with employers, and they have specific needs that sometimes they don't feel the youth in schools are getting, and they're interested in providing some of these opportunities to help and come alongside youth and educate them through either apprenticeship or a pre-apprenticeship program.
My alarm call hits. That's why I ran over to get it.
But the opportunities, I think we need, but wouldn't support a mandate. I support options and making opportunities available without forcing anything, because our rural schools need a lot more options. We have plenty of mandates.
Wonderful. I don't think we want to push it on another question. So this is going to be an opportunity for each one of you to give 1 minute closing remarks able to finish the conversation today. We will go ahead and start with you, Steele. If you have a minute to communicate to the audience.
Well, again, thank you so much for having us here today. It's been a pleasure just to see your faces and get to know you, and hopefully you get to know us a little bit better. For me, I just want to say, it has been an honor for me to serve in public office for the last 14 years. Is the heart of service is why I'm running now to be hopefully your next state legislator, if that's where I'm supposed to be. I will say, what I didn't say earlier was that I am a sociologist by training. And so some of the complexity that I said I really like, I really do. And that has to do with, the evolving systems that we have in our world right now. It really demands a lot of the out of the box thinking that I think you have already started on. The innovation pertaining to the future and where we're wanting to go as a society, and how we can embolden and support our youth to be able to get there is going to be really important, as it is also for our current economy and the future that we wish to see here in Washington State. We are leaders, and I think, as far as innovation goes, in many ways in the tech sector, and I feel that that is a tool that we are seeing more of. And again, I'm excited to have this opportunity potentially to serve as your state legislator, to be able to work through a lot of the various conversations we're talking about here that intersect with so many of the other issues that are going on in our society right now that we know about, whether it be housing and all the other workforce things. Won't go into them. You know them well. But I will say thank you again for having us. And I ask for your vote, since you are all potentially, constituents. I'm just going to say that vote for Ing-Moody. Thank you very much.
Andrew, go next.
Yeah, so just in case somebody forgot my name is Andrew Engall. And it has been an incredible honor to run for office. I've met so many incredible people across the district. And, I have four young children, as I mentioned, school aged, and they all have hopefully a bright future ahead of them. And certainly do whatever I can do, should I be elected, to enhance their opportunities for their future and for the future of eventually my grandkids and other people is certainly on my high priority list. My experience working in the congressional office, I think I have a track record of working well with others. I'm a solid conservative who believes in working with people from all walks of life. I'm a curious person. I enjoy talking to people about things that I don't understand yet, and learning and finding creative solutions that fit within the goals and priorities of the majority of the people in my district, and taking into account all those diversity of ideas. So I believe that should I be elected, you'll find me to be easy to work with and a quick learner, and I'll be around when you need me. And my name is Andrew Engall. Go to my website, is electandrew.com.
All right, well, first of all, thank you again for moderating the event tonight. Thank you for the organizers for putting this on. I really want to thank all of you in your room for your passion on these issues. It's apparent in questions proposed and questions that we heard, through the chat. So thank you very much for that. Education is a big deal in my family. My grandparents were public school teachers. That's how they went out initially. Before that, there were school teachers out in Kansas, and my grandmother had a bell she would use to call class to order. So when my sister became a public school teacher in Curlew, even though they had bells, that they should stand out there and ring the bell for the students to come on in. So, it's important to me. It's important to my family. I know it's vitally important to the 7th. It's really important to Washington. People throughout this state, whether you're in rural Eastern Washington or in the Puget Sound area, people are really passionate about education. If I'm fortunate enough to be elected, I will be working hard on this issue. I would respectfully request your advice, feedback, and recommendations for me as I go about getting smarter on this issue, doing my homework, if you will. But again, my name is Hunter Abell. I'm running for position 2, fortunately not running against either of these two individuals. And I would ask for a vote. Thank you.
Well, please join them. Thank you, all of our candidates, for being here tonight. Of course, I don't know if we're going to help.
I think another brief break if you want to grab some refreshments or food.
right, I'm gonna project my teacher voice here, because I have one quick task and I am delighted to do it. I'll introduce our moderator for the District 13 panel. Dr. Sara Thompson is the college president at Bringman, and has been a continued champion and partner for the Upper Network for a number of years now. So I don't think I have anything to add to this. Other than sheer sadness.
Our sons are.
Oh, yeah, we are soccer moms together. I can add that.
All right, well, I get to be here with Tom, Dent, and Alex Ybarra. And I just gonna openly say this, I am big fans of both of these gentlemen. I'm very grateful to both of these gentlemen for what they have done for the community and technical colleges. We really appreciate their efforts on our behalf. So, but don't think you're gonna get softball questions.
Never do.
So let's just take a minute to introduce yourself to us and start with you, Tom.
Thank you. My name's Tom Dent, and I've been in office. I was first elected in 2014, took office in 2015. And currently I serve, and I told Sara earlier that I'm the wrong guy to be here because I'm not on education. I serve on the Transportation Committee, serve on Ag and Natural Resources, and I'm on Human Services and Early Learning. So that's my education part that I have the connection to is the early learning. But children are our future. I'm a kid guy, and I can do everything I can to help them succeed in life. And it's one of the passion that I have around early learning and success for the young people. I truly believe that our young people should have the same opportunities that we have to succeed in life, and whatever I can do to make that happen, I'm all in. So anyway, but I will say it's an honor to serve. I live in Moses Lake. I live on a ranch. My career was flying airplanes. But we also have a small ranch where I raise hay and buffalo. And I have 4 grandkids. There's 3 kids in this mix, and then there's 4 grandkids and 5 great grandkids. So I'm blessed for having kids in my life. They're everything. Okay. But anyway, it's my wife Dana is a big part of what I do. She's been a big supporter of getting me here, helping me get here, and she's a big. Without her, I couldn't be in this job because she takes care of the home. So it's a great opportunity. I view it as an opportunity to serve the people, but to make a difference in this world. And I hope that I'm doing that. So anyway, thank you for having us. Appreciate it.
Alex.
Name's Alex Ybarra. I'm the state representative for District 13, which is most of Grant County, all of Kittitas County, a little bit of Douglas, and I think a little bit of Adams, but I'm not sure. We've got the redistricting lines that just happened recently. So they really haven't given us the official lines yet, but I'm pretty sure we have a little bit of that. So anyway, so I sit on the Energy and Environment Committee. I sit on the Post-Secondary Education and the Workforce Committee and on the Labor Committee. In the House, previously I was a ranking member on K-12 committee. I'm currently the ranking member on Post-Secondary Education Committee. And yeah, so I used to work for Grant County PD for 17 years. I'm an energy guy. And born and raised in Quincy, Washington, where all the data centers are. So energy is a big deal for all of us. So. And I'm going to throw one more thing in with Alex and Judy and I. We're a team, and we work as a team, and we have meetings quite often because we don't all live in the same place. And during session, we have them once a week. Out of session, we have them, I think, every 2 weeks. We keep up with what each one of us are doing because we believe that if we work together, we can be stronger. We appreciate Alex, and I appreciate Alex. I appreciate Judy for all that they do.
And that is absolutely true from my perspective as well. So question number 1 is about digital skills. Technology skills are now embedded in every aspect of life, including accessing ongoing learning, employment, healthcare, news and information, and so many other resources. How would you work to ensure all young people in North Central Washington have access to the skills, devices, and connectivity that they need to prepare for their future careers and lives here. And we're gonna go to Alex.
Okay.
You win.
Boy, so lots of stuff there. So what we've been doing, the state has put together a broadband office. And so we know most of us in Grant County, Chelan County, most of us have access to the internet. And so we're very, very, very lucky, but Okanagan doesn't. Other surrounding areas don't have that capability. So I've been working with the counties and the cities in the state of Washington because they have different committees where they're working on broadband, bringing the hardware to the homes and to the apartments. Also working with a company called NoaNet, and NoaNet's the ones that put in the fiber, I think in Grant County. I'm not sure about Chelan County, but they also do a lot of broadband as well. And also working with the fabulous Dr. Kane over here on digital equity. It's nice to have that broadband at your house, but if you can't, if a lot of folks that are like farm worker laborers and in our area, they don't have access to a computer. And if they get access to a computer, most of them are going, how do I turn it on? How do I log on? And what I do, how do I do it? And so been doing a lot of digital equity work to try to get the folks that need that support to get that support financially, as well as have the programs, again, working with the ESDs and working with Career Tech Connected Learning and other groups to make that happen. So.
Well, Sara said earlier, I told her that I was just going to defer to Alex. And she said, no, you won't. You will. You can't. And that's exactly what we do. We support what all of us do. And Alex has worked really hard on this issue, and I support what he does. But I think more importantly, we need to fund some of these efforts as well. And that takes the majority, 50% plus one of the legislature to fund these things. So it's important that we do that and recognize the importance of this. I see that, I'll tell you, I'm the oldest guy in this room, okay? And I had to learn this stuff. When I was, when computers came out, my wife and I, we were in business, we looked at this stuff and said, we have to know this stuff. We got to know it. So we took computer classes, and I'm really grateful that they were available so we could learn. And that's what we're going to have to do with some of our people that don't know this stuff. We have to help them learn this. And is it that difficult? It seems like it when you start, but once you kind of get into it, it's not so much, right? And but we have to help folks, and we have to be there. And this equity thing is real. We need to make sure that we include that these folks make to move forward.
Thank you. All right, the second question is related to early learning access. So this might be here.
Okay.
So we're going to start with you. In rural regions like District 13, there are significant challenges in accessing early learning and care options for families and employers, compounded by workforce shortages. How do you plan to address these barriers? And what do you think needs to be done first to expand access to high quality early learning and childcare for children and families in our region?
Well, I can answer that. One of the first votes I took when I came in the legislature was the Early Start Act. And it made sense to me that I was when I first came in the legislature, I was on the Early Learning Committee, been there since I've been there. And it made sense to me that we do that. And the reasons that early learning is a pathway out of dependence, okay? We don't need welfare reform. We need to teach people so they can take care of themselves. And I believe that. I truly believe that. And to give them a pathway out of dependence, to me, is the way to go. Okay. And I want to tell you, I came back home to Moses Lake and took a ton of heat for that vote. I took a lot of heat. And but it's, we're 10 years later, and I'm okay with that heat. I was okay with it then. But, well, I did the right thing. And if they don't like me, then oh well. Okay. But it was the right thing to do because, it just let these. My early learning experience when I was a little boy was my aunt, my uncles, my cousins, my brother, my sisters, and they always took me somewhere. I was never left anywhere, but they answered every one of my questions when I said why, right? And that was really important to me because I learned that I could learn. Okay. And I didn't have the college that I would have liked to have had, but you know what? I learned how I could teach myself, and I learned how to learn. Okay. And if we can get these kids started right when they're little to learn, that's a success. We're on our way, okay? Where are we at right now? The majority of our early learning program is in our childcare centers. That's where it's at. And we have a childcare crisis in this state that is, to me, is beyond words. It's just, I can't believe that we're there because we don't have to be there, but we are. And so we worked out with a lady from Washington, or she lives in Virginia, but she's currently she worked in the Pentagon and put together the military childcare program. She gets this stuff. And we spent hours with her trying to sort out how we can improve our childcare and how we can fix some of this, because we don't want to lose early learning. Okay. But number one, we need to remember what early learning is supposed to be. Let's don't make it something it's not. Part of what has happened to us is we put an education requirement in there, and our early learning centers are losing their people. They don't have them. They're quitting. And I've been more early learning and childcare centers than I bet anybody in this room. I've been in them. I've seen them. I've talked to these teachers. I've talked to these owners, and they're overwhelmed with regulations. Okay. We learned that there's over 750 regulations, rules for our childcare centers. We are crushing them. We're crushing them under an overburdened regulatory load. Okay. And we have to lighten that load, and then we have to give them an opportunity to help these people. We're going to have to back up on the educational requirements because so many of the teachers that work in these centers will not go to school. They won't do it. And they told me they don't get the math. They don't get something. They're just not going to do it. But they're good at what they do. And to have a knack with a kid, with a 2 or 3 or 4-year-old kid, that takes a special human being. And I'm a kid guy. Okay, I'd be done by noon. Okay, I'd be done. I'd go home. Get somebody else, and that's reality. But when we have special people like this that can to reach out and hug these kids and teach them, and everybody gets home at the end of the day, and the next tomorrow they start over again. That's really special, and we don't want to lose that. So we do have a bill. I'm working with a group of child care center people, and we wrote a bill last year. We couldn't move it. We're rewriting it and adding to it, changing a little bit, but we have a big, we're planning a big push to move this legislation this year so we can keep our child health centers viable and we can keep early learning moving forward, right? So that's what I plan to do, is work on this legislation and do that. Oh, it's kind of a long answer, sorry.
You're fine.
Yeah. I'm a little passionate on something.
Yeah, I was gonna make a comment about that. Like, you definitely came alive on that one, Tom.
So in a matter of time, I'll repeat what Tom said earlier. What he said. But no, just in all reality, I've got a committee that's a workforce committee, and we've been working to try to get some bills together in order to help with licensures, early learning folks that are doing that work at the moment. So we're trying to make that a little bit easier and not cost as much when you pay those fees. So that's a little bit of what we're doing.
All right, third question relates to post-secondary resources. As a rural region with no access to a university, community and technical colleges play a vital role in our regional workforce development strategy. I've been in their offices to talk to them about this a lot. So we are committed to ensuring local industries have access to the skilled workforce they require. And our colleges face challenges related to shifting enrollments, instructor shortages, and general resource constraints. How should the state be responding to the needs of our community and technical colleges? Alex, we'll start with you.
So I think we're doing a lot of it. I think we're doing a lot of work. I know there's a lot of pieces that aren't there yet, but it's happening. And just to let you know, so I used to be a school board member in Quincy, Washington for 9 years. So I'm very keenly aware of how schools work and don't work, at least for the work I was doing. And so when I know I don't know something, what I usually do is just talk to the presidents of our local colleges and go and ask them, say, what should we do? What should the legislature do? Because I know I don't have the answers. But the only way you can know those answers are to talk to the folks with the boots on the ground. When I pass legislation, what I get from the folks from Freight or from Quincy or from Cascade is, Alex, this doesn't work. Alex, blah, 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 blah. And so you get to the ones that tell me what to do and what not to do. And so we try to carry that forward to the legislation that happens next year if we got it wrong the first time. How to bring post-secondary? I think we're doing, we have the Running Start. We talked about the colleges in the high school. And just to let you know, probably about a month or two ago, grabbed our president of Big Bend Community College, and she and I and the Chairman Slatter of the Post-Secondary Education Committee sat down and both of us listened to Sara for a long time about how we can fix the issue with colleges and high school. And so she had fabulous answers. Now it's up to us to make that work happen and bring a better position for the local high schools, the small high schools, the rural high schools that can't get those types of classes in their schools. So we're definitely working on it, and it's one of my priorities to get that done since I'm the ranking member on post-secondary education. So.
Thank you, Alex. Tom, you want to take a crack at that?
Sure, I'm a big fan of our community colleges because it gives young people an opportunity to some of them start there and move on to four-year college or university, but many of them go there and then earn a career. To get started in life, they can go out and get a job, take care of their family, which is what most of us wanted to do in the very beginning. And Sara knows how passionate I am about. I'm one of the biggest fans. Okay, and I'm out there to help. I've heard a lot of things around these community colleges, how the money works and how they're funded and how it works on the statewide level. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But on the same token, as my seatmate just said, we have to hear from you. Because for us to wade into something that we kind of understand and change it, and you think, I don't want to change, okay? Then we have to keep that in mind that we need to hear from the experts, and you're the experts. For those of us in the legislature, our knowledge base has to be about 2 miles wide, but it's only about half-inch deep, okay? That's our knowledge base. We have to know a lot about a lot of things, but we just know enough so we can maybe hopefully ask the right questions, okay? And then, but we need you to help us, whether it's community college, four-year university, K through 12, whatever it is. We need your advice, your direction, and your guidance so we can do the right thing, so we don't mess the thing up. And that's the truth.
So, well, we're right on time. You each get a minute to offer any final remarks. So we'll start with you, Tom.
Well, number one, I'm thank you for having me. I appreciate that. Listen to me kind of rant a little bit about early learning and the kid base, but keep doing what you're doing. You know, our children are really our future. They're our most precious natural resource. And the more we could do for them when they're young, the better they're going to be when they grow up. And my wife and I were foster parents for quite a long time, and we actually adopted a child out of the foster parent program. And you know, we just have that love for these kids. And the reason we were foster parents was because most of these foster kids get off to a real bad start in life, right? And it's like, well, maybe we can fix that. Maybe we can help them turn that corner so they can have the same opportunities that everybody in this room has. I think that's what's important. That's what I love about America, is because we all have the same opportunity. And even though it doesn't seem like it at times, you know, we do have a lot of equity in this country, and it's often, but it's our job to keep that moving forward and keep it braced up so it works. And that's just one of my passions, sir. All right. Anyway, thank you for having me.
Alex.
So this morning I was at the state capitol this morning speaking to a group. They called me up 2 weeks ago. It was a Department of Energy in Washington, D.C. They said, we're going to come to Washington and Idaho and begin what's called Hispanics in Energy. And so they asked me to speak, and I was speaking to those folks, and they were talking about equity and how do you get Hispanics in energy. And I kind of said, well, you don't have to do anything. All you have to do is go to Big Bend Community College, go to Wenatchee Valley College, go to all the local high schools in this area, because we're all, about 50% Hispanic in this area. And you want people in energy, and what better place to find energy Hispanics, students, than around here. You don't have to do anything special other than come and talk to our local colleges in our high schools where those kids are. And so it didn't seem like a big daunting thing where you have equity and all this other stuff that people do all the time. Just come here, because this is where we have a lot of energy. We're going to have some hydro, or we have hydro, obviously. We have a little bit of wind. We're going to have hydrogen. And this is the place to come. And I told them that to come here because this is where we have all those kids. So with that said, it was just great to talk about where we live. So I'm very proud of living in this area. Very proud of shopping in Wenatchee and cutting my hair in Wenatchee. You know, getting my eyes in Ephrata, eyes checked in Ephrata, so been a Quincy guy forever and ever, born and raised here, and really proud of it. And hopefully the Department of Energy comes and look for our students, and they're all our students. So we hope to get them in the right place. Thank you.
Will you join me in thanking these gentlemen?
All right, we're gonna have a little bit of a quicker transition into our last panel for District 12. We've just got a few minutes to stretch legs.
Fireworks, right?
Oh, yeah, I think Deb is on it. Yeah. She's transitioning.
Welcome.
All right, good evening, everybody. Thanks for all of you who stuck around. I'm really excited. This is my first time ever moderating a panel, so please be patient with me, but I'm very excited about it. I'm really happy to have, it seems like we have 4 people in person and we have Brian on Zoom. Is that correct?
I'm here.
All right, Brian's on Zoom. Great. And is Jim on Zoom? No. Okay, Brian's on Zoom. All right, so let's go ahead and introduce yourselves. I'm going to start with Daniel on the end.
Hi, I'm Daniel Scott, running for 12th Legislative District, Division 2.
I graduated from Kashmir High School, went out to Valley College and Washington State University. So I'm sure I went through some of the education systems that some of you have come from tonight.
Thank you. All right, Mike.
Yeah, good evening. Good to see all of you. Born and raised in Shelly County, graduated from Manson High School, degrees from Pacific Lutheran University, and I am heading into my 5th term in the House of Representatives. I currently serve as the assistant ranking member of the capital budget, so I'm budget writer, and I've been on the K-12 education committee the entire time that I've served in the legislature, as well as serving as the ranking member for a time before I assumed the budget writing responsibilities and leadership responsibilities as the deputy minority leader. So was also on the appropriations committee, but took a little bit of a sabbatical on that in order to deal with the demands of all of my committee work and leadership positions. So great to see all of you, and I'm excited to have the conversation this evening.
Thanks, Mike. I'm actually going to go to Zoom land. So Brian, could you please introduce yourself?
Yes, and thank you for the opportunity to let me join you via Zoom. I'm actually in Baltimore going through a training for the company I work for, so we never stop learning, do we? Anyway, Brian Burnett, you know me as the former Chelan County Sheriff. Did my 25 years career in law enforcement with the Sheriff's Office. Married to my wife, April, of 37 years. Together we have 7 adult children, and just had number 10 grandchild. So again, and I'll steal an expression from Representative Dent that I know that the kids are our most precious renewable resource, and what they have to offer for learning and opportunities for the future. I currently work as a director of law enforcement services for Seattle's finest security, and I'm also a contract employee for the Washington State Sheriff's Association, past president from that Sheriff's Association, and work closely with the WASPIC, which is your Washington Association of Sheriffs and Police Chiefs.
All right, thank you. Heather.
Hi, so I'm Heather Koellen. I am running for the 12th LD House Representative position 1. I'm currently an ICU nurse at Hillview Medical Center for the past 21 years. I got my first degree in community college. I got my ADN at Bellevue Community College. I continue to go back to this college for prereqs and whatnot. It's been a life source for me. I'm also a North Bend City Council member on my 2nd term, a job that I really love. And both my daughters went through early pre-K through it's called Encompass out in Snoqualmie Valley. And they also did Running Start, which did them well and served them well. But learning tonight about the high schools and the community colleges fighting for funds, that was all news to me. And so that was very good learning on my part. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And Keith.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. I'm Keith Goehner. I'm running for the state senate, the position that recently vacated, so there is no one that's an incumbent. I'm currently a state representative. I'm in my 3rd term. I've been on the local government, transportation, and environment committees, and my background in education started back at Shasta Dryden High School, which is now part of the Cascade School District. I went to Wenatchee Valley College, so when you talk about community colleges, that's near and dear to me because it gave me my first 2 years of college. Finished up at Seattle Pacific University, and then I taught school in Moses Lake. So actually, we lived on the Big Bend campus area there. So that was a few years ago. But when I came back to the Valley, where I was born and raised, I was on the Shasta Ryan School Board. So I've had that opportunity to be engaged there, been involved with the Cascade Education Foundation for a number of years, and just staying in touch with learning. I've also coached in the schools. So, I mean, what I'm saying here is that education is important to me. And, we have a daughter that's a teacher in Kashmir School District. So it's so significant that each kid has an opportunity to really, understand and have their potential really unleashed through education. And that's what I think we all are trying to get there. I think tonight we'll have the opportunity to talk about some of these key issues.
All right, thank you. And thank you all for being here. We really appreciate it. My first question is for Keith. Keith, funding is a big issue. with school districts. We were talking a little bit about it earlier, but it's much bigger than that. How do you propose to create a more sustainable and predictable K-12 funding structure that reduces reliance on local levies and ensures that all districts have consistent access to the resources needed for a high-quality education?
Well, it's interesting that you throw in the local levies, because when I was on the school board, that was the first time where they tried to put a levy. When I say tried, I mean, we did put a levy lid cap on local obligations. And obviously through the years, I mean, I kind of lost a little bit of track while we were raising our kids. I wasn't really following the funding and didn't realize it actually had that same creep that had come into play where we had the inequities of the different districts. Some districts they have the resources, they have a great tax base. And Quincy is a case in point where if you look at their facilities, you say, well, their education system is not an issue. But then you go to Sultan and you realize there's a real significant issue here because they have a high demand because they have a lot of kids, but they have a very small tax base. So when the state had to come up with a McCleary fix, I mean, that was supposedly a way to make sure that everybody was cared for and there shouldn't be an issue. Well, obviously, we're a few years past that and we're not actually getting to where we thought we were. I think the biggest issue that we have at the state level is not having the key players at the table when the conversations are taking place. You know, legislators, Tom mentioned that your knowledge is 2 miles wide and, pretty thin. And we really need in all our legislation to have more of the key players at the table and making sure that the decision that we're going to eventually come to really does play out in the real world. Because it seems like we think we have a great idea, we run with it only to find out that there are unforeseen circumstances that really have not addressed to the core issues. So, to your question specifically is I don't have those answers. But I do know that there are people that are very willing to sit and have those conversations. And I think that's what we have to do is really have a frank conversation and be intellectually honest about what we're trying to accomplish and how we're trying to get there.
Thank you. My next question will be for Heather and for Brian. And this is about collaboration with industry and education. Successful career-connected learning requires strong partnerships between schools, colleges, employers, and workforce development agencies. How will you support these collaborations, particularly in sectors like healthcare, clean energy, and advanced manufacturing, to ensure that students gain valuable work-based learning experience? And let's start with Heather.
Thank you. I'm not quite as eloquent as Mr. Goehner here or have his experience, but I did research it a little bit. So I'm going to read, which is probably inappropriate, but I wrote down some answers. So strong partnerships between schools, colleges, employers, and workforce development agencies are the cornerstone of successful career-connected learning. I will work to strengthen these collaborations by advocating for more state-sponsored initiatives that bring together stakeholders from education and industry to create a pipeline of work-based learning opportunities. For example, in sectors like healthcare, clean energy, and advancing manufacturing, we need to ensure students are gaining real-world experience through internships and apprenticeships that not only meet the needs of employers, but also help students transition seamlessly into high-paying jobs. And this could be done by expanding funding for programs that connect high schools with communities.
Thank you. Brian, do you need me to repeat it or do you recall?
No, that's fine. I think I'm just going to brag up our current legislative team for District 12. And I've had to go to them for this topic. This is a really a topic on the funding side of things and even through the collaboration side that we're talking about now is a new topic for me. But I know that they've done a great job for, successful bringing employers and creating internships and workplace different opportunities. And I think our kids have suffered in some ways as young kids and the regulation that comes with that and taking away the opportunities for kids to learn how to work. and how to be mentored properly and have good, strong work ethics. As I grew up in Orchard in the Upper Valley, as I graduated from Cascade High School there in 1985, being the second graduating class after they consolidated. But, you know, I grew up on a pear and apple orchard, and we were afforded the opportunity to know what hard work was like and what the benefits of those were. And if you didn't want to be a manual laborer or an orchardist, I guess, Keith, you decided to go back the other way. You were an educator and decided you would be an orchardist. I think they both worked out for you. But having said that, it allows a person to see what are their gifts and their talents and what is it they like to put their hands to work. And so I think that bringing job creation, I think we got to continue to bring that lens to the legislature and push the policy and funding that will align with that. We just really need to introduce our kids back to the workforce at an earlier age. And I think we need to look at all different areas that we can to do that and afford them the opportunities to find out what they can be successful at and what their real true talents or interests are.
Thank you. All right, my next question is for Mike and Daniel, and this is about artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is reshaping work in every sector in Washington State. How should Washington State be investing in preparing youth for the future of work with AI tools? And what steps need to happen to ensure that all youth have access to develop these essential employability skills? And we'll start with Mike.
Well, this is something the legislature is actually actively debating right now. We're leaning into it because I think there's a tendency by the legislature and by policymakers to be a little bit fearful of what AI is and how it can be utilized. And I think we have to take the time to really take this deep dive and understand how AI can improve the quality of life for all of us and how we can create bridges between AI, our students, and employers. Because I think, one of the things that we know very clearly in Washington State, because we are on the front edge of so much technology, right? We are home to Microsoft, we are home to Amazon, we are home to Google. The legislature here in Washington State has to get it right. And we have to understand that those employers are moving at lightning speed. And we have to make sure that the students that we're educating to keep up with those employers have the tools necessary to do that. And so we are actively, as I said, debating it. We've passed a series of bills related to digital stewardship, citizenship, and responsibility. So folks and our kids have an understanding of what it means to be engaged in the digital era. And so we have to do more work in that. And as someone who has been on that K-12 education committee, this is something we're hearing about through testimony. It's something we're hearing about from our colleagues. And it's something that we're debating actively because, again, folks don't understand what they don't understand. And this is new territory for the legislature. It's new territory for all of us. And so I think we're trying to be methodical, and I think we have to be. I think we need to be very careful in how we move, and we are. So all that is to say, this is, the legislature doesn't move fast already. But when you have something that's sort of policy heavy and nuanced, we're going to take our time, hopefully, getting it right. But we are relying on industry experts, and we are relying on folks who do business here in Washington State. And again, we're lucky because we have those experts right out of it. We're looking at all of that.
Thank you. And Daniel.
Yes, AI is becoming very valuable out in the workforce to be able to help workers become more productive in all kinds of jobs. And so we need to look at how can we train our youth to be using AI correctly. The schools give out Chromebooks to almost every student now. Most students have smartphones. And so how can we use these tools that are already in these kids' hands to educate them and teach them how to use AI to help with the future? And I think there's a big collaboration that can happen between the big businesses, the Googles, Microsofts, Amazons, Apples, and those types of companies using their tools and using AI to educate our kids on the tools that the school districts are already providing for them, already have in their pockets. And I think there's a lot of benefit that can happen there. So I think that we need to leverage what we've got to the benefit of the students and the education system.
Thank you. This question is for Keith, and this has to do with workforce demand. The Apple STEM network data shows that 68% of family-sustaining jobs in North Central Washington require some sort of credential after high school. 28% of our local youth are on track to earn a credential after high school. What do you believe are the most important actions that we need to take immediately to ensure that more of our students are prepared to fulfill these roles for local employers?
I think immediately we need to help kids understand exactly what their life expectations are. There's some kids that right now, they're caught up in TikTok or peripheral things. They're really not thinking about long-term outcomes. So I mean, to have that frank conversation, to help them understand that at some point probably going to need to be responsible. And when we talk about some of the programs that we have where we take the skills tests and try and project, what are your aptitudes and type of thing. I mean, they have to see a clear nexus as to where the fulfillment would come in life. We have done quite a bit actually in trying to provide opportunities for kids to learn other skills or to have exposure to other vocations than what they just see. And I think that, from my perspective, I was pretty locked into being a teacher. And so I didn't even really pay attention to a lot of the things that could have maybe been of interest to me because I was pretty locked into where I wanted to be. And as was mentioned, I mean, yeah, it did work out. That was the direction I went, but then I also made another change. So I think that it's important for us to really encourage kids to think outside the box, outside what they see in their daily lives, because there are so many opportunities. I think about Steele, for example. How you think about it, it's a warehouse. Okay, so that means the fruit goes in, they pack it, they ship it out, and that's the way it is. But then you get into the inner workings of a warehouse, and you realize the computer applications that are there, not only from like the accounting side, but from the sizing. I mean, and then the manufacturing of the equipment. I mean, it is fascinating how many different things are right in our backyard that we only see the outside of. So I think, it's difficult, I think, sometimes for teachers to connect with the kids and encouraging them to do that. But I do think that if we can make more of an effort, like even with the DECA programs or whatever, for business, to get those business leaders into the classroom and actually have more exposure to different things and help kids expand their awareness, I think there would be more of an interest to pursue some of the credential programs that they need in order to be successful in life.
Thank you. My next question is for Heather and Brian. And this is about technology access for rural areas. So there's a new statewide high school and beyond platform, which is online. This is one example of some kind of local or state requirement that exists online. I want it to be understood this is just one example of a online requirement. So given that we have a new required online high school and beyond platform of high school and beyond platform as one of the many examples of online requirements, how will you address technology access issues for students in rural and underserved regions to ensure that they can fully participate in developing and maintaining their high school and beyond plans and also fulfill other online requirements? So we'll start this time with Brian.
Well, obviously, I think the buzzword for the day and the time we're in is we hear equity, equity, equity. And I think this is one that we want to put our resources to work to make sure that everybody has the same equal access to the technology that they need to move forward. I mean, learning is so available to you and any source if you have the internet and the computer to plug in and work with that. And I know that talking to our current legislators, that the capital budget's has made record investments in the rural broadband and the infrastructure. They've made it a point to make sure that they're going to stay focused on the rural access. But I think in some ways there's that last bit of that stretch of how do we complete this and finalize it. It's going to be complicated. I don't necessarily have the answers, but I know that we need to come together and work as a team to make that happen. And let me give you an example. As I was getting on a plane in Seattle just 2 days ago to fly out here for my training, I happened to walk into the C9 gate that was flying out of an Alaska flight, and there was a huge group of people and things going on. And I thought, what's going on? It sounded like there was a party. And this was an honor tour of our veterans that were going to DC for a tour. And you can look up Puget Sound Honor Tour, and there's a nonprofit that helps bring these veterans from all around the United States. They've been in, there was a couple World War II veterans from Vietnam to Korean to even, I think, Desert Storm with their guardians, because a lot of these people were either on walkers, wheelchairs, or prosthetics from their injuries that they received from the wartime activities. What I found on that plane, it was amazing, of the discussions and the conversations that we had as I was surrounded by these individuals, is that not once did bipartisanship come into the conversation, but there was a camaraderie about them that they were going back and visiting. And I saw grandsons pushing their grandfather on a wheelchair. I saw daughters pushing their 90-year-old father. And just, again, it's about setting a pathway to make the future generations, as Representative Dent said, our most renewable resource, the opportunity. And then that's what America is made on. I mean, it's the opportunity. It doesn't guarantee a success, but we want to try to lay that platform and that foundation before them. And I think that that's what you have. I think that I know that I support that. I know that our current legislative team supports it. And I really look forward to the opportunity to work together with them, even across the aisle, with our current boundaries that were changed within the boundary redistricting, with our current legislators of the 39th, the 5th, even they're stretching across the 7th into the 13th. We know that we're going to need to bring all the resources together and fund this and make it happen in an expeditious way as possible.
Thank you. Heather, could you please repeat? Sure can. So given that the new statewide high school and beyond platform, which is a requirement, and it's just an example of online requirements, but it will be online, how do you address technology access issues for students in rural and underserved regions to ensure that they can fully participate in developing and maintaining their high school and beyond plan or other online requirements?
Thank you. So first part, I'm gonna wing it, and the second part, I'm gonna read what I wrote down. But I can tell you, when I go up Highway 2 in Sultan, and we'll just use Index as an example, the number one gripe they have is that broadband accessibility. And they need better, it's not consistent with what they have works, but not all the time. And so I feel like for students, that would be very, very challenging. So we need to advance the broadband system in the more rural areas, and also find a way to get teachers, and I'm not sure how, I'm winging it, to go up and educate, maybe through a library or a community center, or I don't know, but have some sort of system to educate the people on how to use their devices. But the high school and beyond plan, this is the first time I had ever heard of it, but it can be a critical tool to connect students with career opportunities. But we need to ensure that it's more than just a graduation requirement. It must become a bridge between education and the workforce, offering students clear, tangible connections to career pathways, apprenticeships, and technical training. And I would advocate for integrating career exploration earlier in students' academic journeys, starting in middle school, so that by the time they are prepping for their HSBP in high school, they already have exposure to the diverse opportunities available to them. And we also need to ensure strong partnerships between local industries, community colleges, and high schools to create a seamless transition from school to work in fields like healthcare, renewable energy, manufacturing, and tech. This system should align with Washington's workforce needs and ensure students graduate with the skills that employers in our state are actively seeking. Thank you.
Thank you. And just to build a little bit on the last question, this question is for Mike and Daniel, and it kind of continues the idea of technology and equity. There's a proposal to have computer science as a graduation requirement. So how do you plan to ensure that all schools, particularly those in rural and under-resourced areas, have the necessary technology, qualified teachers, and support systems in place to meet this mandate by 2029, especially given that technology is supported by local and not state funding? And we can start with Daniel this time.
Well, we live out in very rural areas and a lot of places have poor internet access. Even at my own house, I don't have cell service. I think that's common in a lot of the canyons in Chelan County. You get the eastern Snohomish and eastern King County. A lot of places, they just don't have access. It's just so rural. It's very expensive to build broadband into these areas and very time consuming. And it's going to take more than 5 years to get broadband out to some of these areas. And it's going to cost billions of dollars. And fortunately, the federal government and the state has been supporting that rollout with funding in other ways. But we do need to make sure that we educate the teachers on how to educate the children on how to use these devices. And we need to make sure that there's systems in place to do that. This proposed requirement, this computer science requirement for all students, I think it's pretty valuable. My own kids just graduated, been out of high school for just a couple of years. And I was kind of surprised with what my kids didn't learn in high school about computers. My daughter's at Washington State University now, and she didn't know how to use a spreadsheet. And I've been teaching her how to use a spreadsheet. That's something she's happened to do in a class she's in right now. So there's a lot of opportunities there. And I think it's going to be beneficial for the kids to learn these basic skills that are very valuable out in the workforce. Because out in the workforce, virtually everybody uses technology. I happen to be an engineer. I'm probably one of the few engineers running for state legislature in the state. And so we kind of understand, what it's going to take and how difficult it's going to be, and also how necessary it is to make happen for our children.
Thank you. Mike?
Yeah, I think I could really geek out on this question actually, because we get into like Core 24 and all the requirements of graduation and what we're adding as a legislature. I think it's really important that one of the things I believe as we're making these policy changes and we are constantly sort of layering in these additional requirements for K-12 is that we have to stand behind what it is we're doing. If we're going to make requirements, then we have to put money behind those policy advancements. And so I think to your point about these local dollars, how do we stretch those? Well, the state needs to step in. If this is going to be important to us and we say it is, as a legislature, we have to fund it. So and we have time to do that. So, luckily it's not coming into fruition until that 2029 date, and we will continue to have more conversation around it. But as we expand again those requirements, I get a little frustrated because we live in a digital age, but we're asking our kids to constantly be doing more. We're asking our teachers to be teaching more. We're asking our schools to fit more into the curriculum that we're trying to get these kids to accomplish before they graduate. I obviously was a co-sponsor of the graduation pathways, right? So I believe in giving kids flexibility and giving them an opportunity to excel where they can. So when we layer in this opportunity, when we talk about this as a requirement, we should make it part of, in my opinion, one of the pathways as an opportunity for graduation, and then fit it in appropriately into their school day and their schedule and their curriculum, because otherwise it just becomes another mandate that the state says you must accomplish without the backing and the frustration that goes along with it for administrators and teachers and the like. So I look forward to having more conversations about it. I don't think it's a done deal. I'm happy that we did it. I think it's an important and valuable tool, and I think it's something kids are already sort of experimenting with in terms of their digital experience. Making sure that they understand what that means and how to be responsible citizens goes back to that digital literacy, that digital responsibility that we're trying to make sure they have as students in our state. This is unique for a legislature across the country because we do put an emphasis on being good digital citizens and what that means and trying to educate our students in that. So We are, I think, a ways ahead of other states, but we have more work to do. And I think we have to back up our policies with money if we expect it to be an actuality in our school districts.
Thank you. I know we're a little bit ahead of schedule, so I apologize, but I'd like to just throw out a question for you. And I really was hearing Alex when he was talking earlier about a lot of times the legislators, you hear from school districts when there's a problem that we want you to solve. But I think for speaking from someone, a superintendent in North Central Washington, I would also like to know that my legislators are proud of North Central Washington and are representing our region and in a kind of a way to highlight what's special about North Central Washington. So just throwing it out there, and you don't have to answer, but I would just love to know from each of you, if you're willing, what are you proud of about K-12 education in North Central Washington? What would you say to people in Olympia about what education looks like here? Elevator speech, what's great about education in North Central Washington? Just throwing it out there. So I'm just gonna let you pick since I made up the question. So who would want to answer? All right, Heather.
Hi. So I just Googled you today because I wanted to know who my moderator was.
Okay.
And there was a lot to say about the great things you're doing for Central Washington School District. One of the things I read is that you have if the children or teenagers are doing well, they can get a pass to Stevens Pass or all these different field trip type experiences really for doing well. And I thought that was a really great way to motivate learning in schools. That's one example.
Thank you, Abell Resorts. Yes, anybody else? Thank you.
Well, I think, you're talking about North Central Washington, I'm going to stretch it out to the district.
That's fair.
I think we have, a number of districts that are really stand out. I'm thinking about the Sultan district, they have national, recognition on a couple of programs that they have. The Kashmir has had national recognition. I know Cascade has, and you just go on down the line. There's so many different districts that have had great success. And I don't want to start leaving, districts out because I know Chelan is here and and I all the districts do have distinctive, because when you talk with each one of the superintendents, you realize the challenges that are there. And you also recognize the commitment that we see in each one of these superintendents to try and provide the leadership for their respective districts. We're at a very difficult time across the state with a number of districts, but I do think that, the District 12 schools have really made a commitment and they've managed things well, and they're really looking to the future. And I think that's what we have to be looking at is, how can we best prepare our kids for the future? And I see that happening in our district. So I'm proud of the education.
Thank you. Daniel.
Well, I'm proud to say that I graduated from institutions here, and so did my children, Kashmir High School, Ranch Valley College. And you educators, you have a daunting task. You've got all these different kids constantly coming through, graduating, moving on up. And there's so many different needs that those kids have. And you educators are sitting there balancing, because so many kids learn differently. I have two kids, a son and a daughter, and they learn fully differently. And so you have to, motivate these kids, and you have to make it fun for these kids. And it's been done very well around here. We keep hearing about, field trips and things like that. My best learning always happened outside of the classroom, whether it was field trips or whatever it was. It could have been weekend stuff. I was fortunate I was involved in a lot of things, extracurricular activities growing up. And the schools have been very good at fostering this environment that have choices and range. And we need to continue that, because there's a lot of kids that are still struggling within that. And I don't envy you, educators that have so many different learning styles and so many different kids to bring up, because you're constantly trying to move these kids up. And, we talked about pre-K. My wife works at Kashmir in the pre-K. She's part of the ECAP program. She's a parapro. And I hear every day, the struggles of the kids she has to work with. And boy, does she love those kids. She's part of your education group. And I think she's making a huge difference. And the teachers and her educators in her district, I'm sure every district, they absolutely love these kids. And they work really hard to make these kids the best they can be.
Thank you. Brian or Mike? Either one of you want to jump in?
Good, Brian.
I'll go ahead. I'd like to touch on a couple things. One is school safety, because it's such an important aspect of the learning environment for people to feel safe, both for the students and for the faculty and the staff. And so that takes me back to your predecessor, Tracey, before we met, and bringing back the school resource officer program, not just for school safety alone. It's a deterrent to try to minimize or completely negate violence within the school, but it's also a way to build bridges and communications through mentorship as you build relationships with the sheriff's office or local police department, whoever is in that position. And I would just give a shout out, because we could have never made that had that opportunity happen if it hadn't been for the great leadership in the many superintendent positions from the different school districts, from Superintendent Glenn Johnson and Cashmere, your predecessor, and then eventually yourself, but then also in the Lake Chelan School District and Manson School District, and how they came together and we communicated with the cities to be able to put those programs in place that were affordable for everyone involved, because it wouldn't have happened without that partnership. And I think that's to again create that learning environment where people feel safe and they're not fearful of some violent act happening within their school, so they can focus their mental energy on that. But I also want to talk about the early learning child, because I have a sister that's educator within the Cascade School District for the special needs. And I also have family from my wife's side of the family that works with the early child learning. And I can remember early on as elected sheriff getting invited to come speak to one of their training seminars in Wenatchee. And I walked into a room of 80 plus, mostly female educators for early learning child. And I thought, I am way out of my element here. But I just brought the simplicity of what I had experienced as a young field deputy in the areas that we would go in and see some of these kids at a disadvantaged arena that were scared of law enforcement, that we were the bad guys, and were they on a path to follow their family members before them? Because when I worked in the jail prior to going to the field, at times we would see up to 3 generations at a time in custody at one time. And to me, that was not acceptable. And so there's a organization called Fight Crime, Invest in Kids. And it's a national nonprofit with, they have chapters in almost every state that I believe in. And Laura Wells was the chapter representation. And she had such a way of marketing for that early child learning. And that slogan was, pay me now or pay me later. And I can't think of a better way to see the money go forward to bring some of these challenged home situations for these young children. And I think that our area has done a fabulous way of promoting that, both compassionately, but yet empathetically, because some people have come from single parent places to how do we raise our children to bring them up in the best learning environment. Some of them are coming from foster care, you name it. Some are coming from families that are getting deported because they're not legal, but yet their children are left here. And so trying to find a way that they can educate them and take care of them here in the United States. So I guess I would applaud all of the ESD in our region here, which is a tremendous amount of school districts. I don't even know what that number is, but I know it's big. And I think those are the two things that I would point out.
Thank you. And Mike, you want to finish up?
Sure. I'll say the same thing that I always say when I'm talking about home, North Central Washington. I'm proud of the community and the people. And I'm inspired every day to go back and serve in Olympia because of the community and the people. And I think, I take this job very seriously in that I feel like the folks you send to Olympia are reflections of your communities, right? And so hopefully we embody the same things that we embody here in Olympia, which is we care about our folks, we care about our kids, we're innovative when it comes to learning and educating. When there's a person in need, we meet that need. When there are folks who are struggling, we meet them where they are. It's a great place to grow up. I mean, I say that with a family who's been here 6 generations. Like, we are here, we are committed, our roots are here, and we want to keep developing opportunities for the folks who live here. And again, when I go out into the bigger world that is the legislature, I love to tell the story about where I'm from. I'm happy to share it, and I'm happy to share the examples of the creativity and the work that our ESD is doing, that our educators are doing, that our schools are doing, but that our communities are doing in partnership with that. I mean, one of the things I always say is one of the most difficult election positions ever has got to be serving on a school board. I've never done it, but I watch folks do it, and I'm amazed that anybody signs up for that job. It is fascinating because it is hard work and it's thankless work. Same with being a teacher, same with being a superintendent. I mean, we sat down, several weeks ago, and we're talking about the plights of being a superintendent and all the things the state is asking you to do. And we're also trying to make you figure out how to stretch a dollar at the same time. If it weren't for our communities in North Central Washington, that stretching of dollars would be much more difficult. If we didn't have a great community college system, we wouldn't be as fortunate in North Central Washington, Big Bend, Wenatchee Valley College, because we are able to keep our kids here and educate them here in our culture, in our way of life. And I think that has tremendous value. And then we send those same kids out in the world to make a difference. And so for me, that's a cool story. For me, that's an inspiring story. For me, that kind of warms my heart. And I'm glad to be part of it. I'm glad to be able to represent folks in Olympia in that way.
All right, thank you, Mike. Well, it is time now for the final remarks. This has been just a wonderful panel. I've really appreciated hearing from all of you. You each have 2 minutes to offer your final remarks, and I'm going to start with Keith.
Well, it is good to just hear from others, their perspective, because as I mentioned earlier, we don't always have all the right answers for the solutions. As we're talking about STEM, it's interesting. My wife, Lisa, and I raised 3 kids, and when we were raising them, we encouraged them to be educated, to pursue education. And, we've talked a lot about keeping your kids home. Well, we were able to keep 1 of 3 home. One ended up in Idaho, another down in Southern California, but the one that stayed home brought a husband from Southern California who had no interest at all in being in agriculture growing up. He had no exposure to it. But because of his connection, it's something that he finds great fulfillment in. Our 2 sons and their pursuits, they both going through college, they found, their interests. And what is really, a challenge sometimes is matching up the skill set of the individual with the skill set we offer. And we are not able to offer the same skill set to everyone across the state, and that's a real challenge. And I'm trying to think about outside the box, how we can have maybe some consolidation of districts to have certain offerings, if you're close enough proximity where kids can have more exposure than what one individual district could offer. Because when you look at the funding formula, I recognize the challenges that you have. I realize that it doesn't fit all of the desires you might want to provide as a district. But if we can be working together and finding ways to, provide opportunities that, may need some collaboration, that would be, to me, a win-win for the community. So that's my commitment, is to try and, make sure that kids get exposure to a variety of training opportunities so that they can make good choices for their futures.
Thank you, Keith. Heather.
Yes. So thank you for having us here. It's been educational for me personally. I've learned a lot tonight, which is what education is all about. I appreciate everything that you all do and keep going at it and moving forward. But I'm just going to tell a quick story from my work life. And it's not STEM based, but it is high school based. So I have this patient, and he was only 44 years old. And he had a heart attack, and someone found him down, and they initiated CPR and called the EMT. The EMTs came, got him to Aberdeen Hospital, and then they flew him to Harborview. So this man, we cool them. We keep them cool for like 24 hours, and then we wake them up. So he wakes up and everybody was really, he could speak, he knew who he was, he knew everything. But he did have short-term memory. So he kept asking me, how did I get here? And I said, you had a heart attack. Someone found you down. He said, who? Who found me down? And I said, I don't know, some bystander, maybe we'll never know. They did everything right. EMT came. And this girl, this little girl sitting behind him raises her hand like she's in class. And she said, it was me. I was the bystander. It was his 15-year-old stepdaughter. And I'm a hardened nurse. So I'm like, where did you learn that? And she said, my high school. And I was like, which high school? And she said, Aberdeen High School. And I'm starting to tear up because she saved a life. And I said, which class did you learn that in? And she said, my health class. So I was just amazing. She's a hero. I got permission from her and her parents to call her principal to let them know that their health class had worked, and also called whatever the Aberdeen newspaper is, but public education works. That's my story.
Well, I'm officially going to count that as STEM since that's science. Brian.
You bet. Well, I think STEM, if I wrote this down right, promising careers to gain access to jobs that pay a family wage, open pathways to post-secondary education and certification. I think one of the big things is a father of 7 adult children is their learning styles are so different, and they all have different challenges, and some have photographic memories and it's a breeze, and other ones, my wife and I, we had 2 that had dyslexia, and we had to take them and have them tested through the Sylvan Learning Center. But what I could remember that person coming back within a very short time and saying, well, your son's having a hard time reading, but I can tell you this, he's not dumb. And then they went on to teach us how where a child is challenged in one side of their brain, they're almost always gifted in another. And so I just want to let people know is I'm committed to support the school and the STEM programs to say, how do we pull out and tap into each child's gift and allow them to learn to their full potential? And I think that's the real key here. And we have to do that by coming together and working collaboratively in a lot of different ways, whether it's current legislators, the people within the school system, and people outside, past educators and such, or people that just have the different knowledge base. And so I'm excited about this opportunity to serve the 12th. I'm really in a position to be able to put it before the citizens and work hard, joining our current legislative team. I heard that our legislators talked about the teamwork that they have over in the 13th district. And I can tell you that we have such a great opportunity here for myself to work with both Keith Goehner and Mike Steele as our current legislators. I'm just super grateful for this opportunity and hope that I get the chance to represent you all.
Thank you, Brian. Mike.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, as always, for having us. This is always a fun conversation, an enlightening conversation, and a great opportunity to continue to learn. I was honored to be one of Washington State's first STEM champions several years ago. And again, thank you for that honor. With my colleague, Vonda Slatter from across the aisle, we both came in the same freshman class, and we both pride ourselves on the work we're doing around STEM and STEAM. And I think we have a lot more work to do. And I think one of the progress points that I'm really proud of is we are slowly starting to change some of the semantics around post-secondary education and what that actually looks like and what opportunities exist for kids, and teaching kids that there are things outside of that 4-year graduation, that 4-year college pathway. You can do other things. When career and technical educational opportunities, the world is your oyster. And trying to encourage kids earlier in their high school career to achieve that and understand that has been really, really fun work. And watching kids really kind of be inspired by that is cool too. One of the most moving testimonies that I've ever been part of in my time on the K-12 education committee was listening to a student recount a story about going through up until the 10th grade, they felt like they were a failure. They felt like they were not making progress in their high school education until they discovered their VOAC teacher. And their VOAC teacher was teaching them a technical trade, a technical skill. And then they, in turn, were able to teach other students in their class that trade, that technical skill. And they said, and this is heartbreaking because I don't think we should ever let a student get to the 10th grade and make this realization. But at the 10th grade, they said, I, for the first time, realized I wasn't stupid. I had the opportunity to teach other kids around me something that I was good at. And I was really proud of that achievement and really proud to be able to pursue a career, something I have a passion with doing and I actually found out I was good at. And so we need to be doing more of that. We need to be encouraging kids to find those pathways for achievement, to find those pathways for success and fulfillment. And I'm proud to be part of that. So thank you for this group and the work you're doing and for, again, that change in the dialogue and that change in semantics around what it means to be a successful postgraduate from the K-12 system in Washington State. I look forward to doing more work with you.
Thank you. And Daniel.
Yes, I'd like to thank the North Central Washington ESD for putting this forum on tonight. It's been a wonderful forum. During this campaign, I've always said that education is my number one priority. I've drawn out 3 priorities and education has always been the number one. And of the state general fund, approximately 44% of the spending this current biennium is on education. Obviously, it's important. It's one of the core competencies. It is the core competency of the state. They need to educate the children. And we need to continue funding that and making that happen. But I do want to give choices. I think that sometimes the state legislature throws too many mandates out there to the school districts, graduation mandates or whatever the mandates are. And different kids have different interests and different learning styles, and different schools have whole different types of students, from the farming communities to the urban areas. And I want to make sure that the school districts are given the ability to make choices that are best for their students and not just a bunch of mandates from the state. And that's been an issue for many items that make it through the state legislature. STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. I graduated from Washington State University with a Bachelor of Science in Electrical Engineering. So there I am right in the middle of this. But I'd also like to take and say that trades could also be the T in STEM. We've heard a lot about trades around here, and I work with a lot of tradesmen. They're very good, they're very skilled, educated in ways that I'm not. And I think that's also something that's very important. Almost all of those people in the trades have some type of post high school education, whether it's an apprenticeship or whether it's a trade school, a community college. They're out there, working those things. And then we use mathematics, but we could also put medical for M. We've heard from, we kind of want that in science, but we've heard from people around here how important the medical industry is. And it's a very big industry. It could almost be stand on its own. And M could also be for military. We heard from a veteran up here earlier, and the military is also doing that education piece as well. So STEM is very important in the education system, providing what are the skills that our kids need to be successful as adults and be productive members of society is something that you all as educators are doing, and that the state legislature is here to support you on that.
Thank you so much. And I'd like to, first of all, just say thank you to everyone in attendance, whether in person or in Zoom land, because everyone who's in attendance has a commitment and an interest in what's happening for our youth. So thank you, first of all, to everyone in attendance. Let's give a hand to those who organized this event, all the organizers. And then let's give another hand to all of our candidates, the ones here and the other ones in the audience. Thank you for everyone who is willing to come forward today. I know personally this has been a very interesting evening, so thank you for the opportunity to be a moderator. For those of you who are physically here in Wenatchee, you are invited to stay for the networking reception. And for those of you on Zoom, well, it's been nice to see Brian. I think there are others out there. So thank you for participating and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, everybody.